Sure.
Let's do it. Okay. All right, we are live, probably. I'd never know what the timing actually is. I feel like YouTube always changes it, but it says we're live, so we're probably live. So for those watching, welcome. This is On Just Restart. This week, I am joined by Dumo. He has returned again. Always a pleasure to have you here, buddy.
Thank you. Always fun to be on here.
Yeah, whenever you're on, I feel like our discussions tend to be really long because we have so much fun. We're gonna try and hold the 2-hour window, which we barely hit. But that's the goal because we all have to work in the morning. But we're gonna try and make for as long as we're talking. We're gonna try to be at least sweet. It may not. We want to go for short and sweet, but we're at least gonna make it sweet. So just keep that in mind. And of course, Brandon is here as well. What about Nintendo?
Hey guys.
And both their channels are linked in the description below. So make sure to check them out. So
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure, guys. Check out their content. It is the holidays. The year is ending. So if you're not busy because you may be on holiday, well, spend some time on their channels and their social media. So for today, given that it is the final podcast of the year because New Year's is coming up, we're gonna have like our concluding podcast for the year, which basically is just talking about next year, as we pretty much always do. But this is the one where we're gonna go full into our predictions. Earlier this week, I made an obnoxiously long video for my predictions for 2021, and that doesn't even have my Smash predictions. I'm still working on that one. I've been caught up with work, but that was a 31+ minute edited video, which took days to finish. And I talk about all my thoughts there, and of course, things are always changing, but now I'm going to be going even deeper into that, and of course, I'm going to be talking about it with you guys here, and I'm really curious what you guys think about what's happening for Nintendo in 2021, but that's the basic deal for the podcast tonight. We're going to be going entirely deeply into our predictions for what's happening with Nintendo next year, and that's a lot, really. I think we could probably go on for like 12 hours talking about that, but we're going to try and be a little bit more efficient this time around. Now, before we jump into that, I'm going to check with the chat with you guys, and every few minutes I'll be checking with the chat. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, for sure, put them down. If you add us, it's a little bit easier for us to get to them. But Brendan suggested something earlier when I was DMing him about if he'd be good for the podcast today, and he suggested that we do like a game of the year thing. And I think you just kind of assumed actually that was going to be like a natural topic to discuss. I was like, why would we do a game of the year discussion? But I was like,
it made sense to me, right?
Yeah,
it wrap up the year.
It does make sense. Like, what was our most exciting game of the year for Nintendo, right? Like, I guess that is a worthy topic to kind of have as an opener while we let people sort of flow into the stream. And I'll be frank with you. I'll give you guys something before we're done with this topic, but I'm not sure what it is yet. So I'm going to let you guys kind of go first if you have a particular game on Switch that you would say is your game of the year.
My game of the year, it has to be Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
It came at the right time. I played it for as long as I could hold on to my island, and now my kids have put in I don't know how many ridiculous number of hours. Events nonstop, like all sorts of great content. Like it just, and include that it was a slow year.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to say anything else. Like I'd want to say Hyrule Warriors, but I still, it hasn't captured me the same way. not how I was hoping it would.
Okay. I'll say that in reference to Age of Calamity, while I've enjoyed the game, once I beat the story, I haven't felt compelled to go back to it. And it's not that I didn't enjoy, I loved the game. I really enjoyed putting in like 35 or so hours into it to kind of go through the campaign. And I did a fair amount of side quests and such, but I really just want to get through the story. That was my big thing, and I did that. Now that I've done that, well, I totally think there's definitely still some gameplay there. Between all the other games I want to play right now, I feel like I should focus on finishing the main campaigns for other games as opposed to doing the side content for Age of Calamity, like the post-game stuff. But in terms of like considering it as like a my Switch game of the year, there's a couple other games that I feel like they kind of captivated me a little bit more. So I kind of see what you're saying there, Dumo. Like, I really enjoyed it in terms of like the Zelda lore and sort of theorizing upon what it may mean for Breath of the Wild 2 and stuff, because that's always fun. But in terms of the game itself, good game, but I'm not sure if it's my game of the year.
I enjoy playing it, and I really wanted to have it like really, really bite me and like really, really suck me in. It just didn't. I haven't finished the campaign yet.
Okay.
Now, granted, I have like family stuff going on. I never stopped working this year.
Yeah.
Splatoon team has been like ramping up. We had a scrim today. Like I've got a lot of stuff going on, so it's hard for me to find time. And then on top of that, like Monster Hunter hype. So.
Oh my God, bro! I am so looking forward to Monster Hunter Rise. Like, we're getting the demo in January, so that's exciting in and of itself. But like, I can't wait to just like, we're gonna like squad up and just play together. Like, I'm really looking forward to like putting together an actual regular team that we play online with. That's what I'm really into, and doing it on the Switch. Like, I'm eagerly awaiting that. So I'm very excited for Monster Hunter Rise. But before we go on that tangent, Brandon, what is your game of the year?
I think as far as Nintendo goes, I have to give it to Paper Mario because I wasn't expecting it to be good. I honestly was expecting another Paper Mario game, then I got let down. I was just going to be disappointed in it. But no, it was actually really good. Was it the same as the classic ones? No, it took its own approach, but it did what it did very, very well. And it was something unique and something different, something that I constantly, every moment that I was playing, it was always finding secrets and always having just a wonderful time going through the game. The presentation is amazing, and the characters and writing is also super good, and just exploring the world just feels super fun. And so I was very surprised that the game was actually good, even though it's not, the RPG mechanics that we were kind of hoping for from Thousand Year Door.
Yeah. You know what, Brandon? I might actually side. I was thinking I might side with you. I didn't know you were gonna say Paper Mario, but that's sort of what I'm thinking. What might be my game of the year? Like, Animal Crossing is a great game, but it's just not my personal cup of tea. Like, I kind of get anxiety after a little while because I think I have to do chores, and I don't like doing chores in my video games. So
Animal Crossing is the type of game I play over the year as they add updates, but I don't play in between. So I pick it up and drop it on and off throughout the year.
Yeah, exactly. It rewards you for playing consistently, and that's just not me.
Yeah, for me, it was my first Animal Crossing, and it's one of those things where it's like just like fishing. I can lose so much time to fishing.
Yeah,
like really, it's like Animal Crossing. You go in and you come out a few hours later, and a big chunk of your day is gone. So if it's not like, it's definitely not for everyone. Definitely not. I didn't know who it was going to be for me. I ended up enjoying it. My kids ended up finding all the creative things to do, and they have designed stuff nonstop.
Admittedly, I never even got to the part where I could sort of like change the terrain. I wanted to get to that part, and I didn't even get that far. I put in like 35 hours, so it's not like I didn't play the game at all, but I just, to get to that point, it required more consistency, more grinding. But I'll tell you that the museum aspect of it, which does tie in the fishing, I really enjoy. I love collecting the insects. I love fishing. I love finding like random things throughout the environment.
Yeah.
And then bringing it to the museum and seeing this museum come together, and then just exploring it and listening to that beautiful, beautiful music. Like, I could just stay there for hours. Oh, that's how amazing incredible. It is. So that was my favorite parts of the game. It was definitely, I would qualify it as magical for sure. But for my game of the year, Brandon, I think I kind of have to agree with you that it's Paper Mario: The Origami King, and that may seem weird to the point you made earlier, Brandon. That it's not like what we expected. There was a lot of controversy with it, but I wasn't like a super big Paper Mario fan before Origami King. Like, I played it on N64 and I enjoyed that one, but I never like this is the Paper Mario I've played more than any other. I played it from beginning to end, and even though I haven't touched it since I've beaten the game, it's a very complete experience. Like, I felt very fulfilled and satisfied once I finished that story, and it had a lot of really touching moments. The gameplay had a lot of variety. The visuals were strong. There were moments where I was actually choked up. Like, there's some powerful beats in this game, I think. Even though it's like a Paper Mario game, like there are some powerful story beats there. And it was a wonderful adventure. It was an actual escape for me. And I guess the thing is that it's not so much that this game is objectively the best game on Switch this year, because I think objectively Animal Crossing New Horizons is the best game, but that type of game is just not my personal taste. For me, my personal taste is a game that is an adventure that sort of offers itself as an escape for me. And Paper Mario the Origami King did that better than any other game on Switch for me this year. It was a magical experience from beginning to end. It was an original game, and it was polished. There was minimal frustration there. So for those reasons, I would pick Paper Mario as my personal Switch game of the year.
Yeah, I agree. My favorite types of games are single-player adventure games that just feel like an absolute complete experience the first time through. So, and I feel like that's what Paper Mario was.
It's hard these days to play through a game, like start to finish and end, and say that was a complete experience. So to hear you guys saying that about Paper Mario, it kind of speaks volumes, you know. It's
not a 100-hour game.
We hear.
Like, maybe it's like a 40-hour game, which is, it's a healthy length. It's sizable, but it's not, it's not a giant 100, 200-hour RPG. And I'm not saying there isn't room for those games. I mean, I love Breath of the Wild. I mean, I love Fire Emblem. Like, those are great games that I put over 100 hours into. But, in terms of what we got this year, Paper Mario was like that complete experience for me.
Yeah.
I do want to mention one more thing before we move on to the chat, and then we'll jump to the actual predictions discussion. We have not mentioned Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and I do feel like that's a very strong game that came out this year. And every time I talk about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I pretty much always say this: as great as it is, it's still a remaster. And I guess that's kind of where I'm not trying to say that remasters can't be like Game of the Year candidates, but they can't. Like if it's a full-blown remake that has new gameplay mechanics, then it's a little different. Of course, you could argue
Fantasy VII remake or something.
Yeah, that's a little different. Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing is that Definitive Edition, there was that debate: remake, remaster. It's sort of somewhere in between. It does have a whole other gameplay segment in there. It does improve upon the mechanics somewhat. So it's not like a clear, simple, bare bones remaster. It's far more extensive than 3D All-Stars, for example. But I think the point I'm getting at here is that it's an experience I already had, but just an improved experience. And I feel like because it was already an experience I had before, it for me, when I'm thinking of my personal game of the year, it wasn't new, so it didn't have that same impact, I guess. While Paper Mario did.
I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. I feel like a remaster can be a personal game of the year. I don't think it can be awarded, actually pull a game of the year award. I feel like that's a little bit disingenuous. It can definitely be someone's this is the game that defined my year. I played it nonstop. I loved every bit of it. And that's, I would completely agree with that out of someone. But as far as video game awards or something, giving it a game of the year, even a nomination, I don't really fully agree with that. So
yeah, and I've put a decent amount of time into the game. I really enjoy it. I'm still playing through it. Actually, I haven't finished all of it. Love that game. I love the original. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. It's just because since it's not a brand new experience entirely, to your point, Dumo, it doesn't feel like it's worthy being called Game of the Year. But not trying to say the game's not great. It absolutely is. So,
I mean, it's the game itself is one of my favorite games ever. So
exactly, same.
But it's just, as you said, it's not a new experience. It's something I've played over and over again and experienced over and over again. So it's just not the same.
Yeah.
And on that point too, like there's also like that nostalgic feeling that sometimes creeps up on you a little bit more than what you were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely see someone saying like this was easily my personal game of the year, and again, like I can't argue against that. It's
Yeah, if it's your most
very,
played, most
very
enjoyed
valid.
game, for sure. Especially if you haven't played it before, it's a new experience for you, right?
Oh yeah.
And so for sure, Xenoblade Chronicles is an incredible game that came out this year. And I'll also say that 3D All Stars, while not as extensive of a remaster, was definitely a nice thing that came out in the year. It's something that I've enjoyed very much, and I will continue to enjoy. I'm glad it's on the Switch, for sure. I mean, there's been some good games that have come out throughout this year. We haven't mentioned everything, but we've touched on some of the big ones. And this sort of leads us into, I guess, the predictions discussion, because basically the 3 games we sort of focused on, right, were Animal Crossing, Age of Calamity, and Paper Mario. Those are pretty much the big brand new Nintendo games that came out for the year. Not that much when you compare it to previous years, right? Going to 2021, the expectation is that it's going to be a lot bigger. Obviously, the pandemic impacted things this year, but also when you look at what development teams haven't come out with a game in the last few years, you got to think that things are coming out really soon. The Zelda team finished Breath of the Wild. They've been working on a game since the end of 2017. The Mario team, the team that made Mario Odyssey, they've been working on a game since 2017 as well. The team behind both ARMS and Mario Kart, they've been working on something since 2017 as well. So those are 3 huge AAA internal Nintendo developers that have been working on something for over 3 years already. And by 2021, it's going to be 4 years. Once we're, like, at some point in 2021, we're going to hit 4 years for each of those development teams in terms of what they're working on. So you got to think that at least 1, maybe 2 of those we'll see gameplay of, and potentially they'll come out next year. Like, there's potential for that right there, right? And of course, there's the Pokemon anniversary, there's the Zelda anniversary, there's the Donkey Kong 40th anniversary, the most important game in Nintendo history, arguably, because it is the game that popularized Nintendo in the West. It's what allowed Nintendo to really push its brand and then eventually go into making consoles. What I'm referring to is Donkey Kong, the arcade game. And that came out in 1981. So there may be something with that. And then there's also Metroid. There's Metroid Prime 4 has been in development. I don't expect that next year, but if there's a 35th anniversary, it's a good opportunity to start marketing that Metroid franchise and creating more awareness for it. And they have a few different options. And of course, a lot of good third-party games that we already know about that are slated for 2021. So just kind of, process all of that while I sort of check in with the chat here. And then we'll jump into our actual predictions.
One thing I'd also like to point out, just sort of as a not really game of the year, but one game that surprised me quite a bit, I'm almost positive was 2020. It's so hard to remember right now. Raji.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
As far as an indie game goes, that was absolutely phenomenal. Great game. Downside, a bit short, but they did a fantastic job of that, and a lot of love went into that game. It looks phenomenal for an indie game. So I'm hoping in the next few years we see a follow up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just
that's made by an Indian developer, correct? They're from India.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. We don't see too many games from there, so it's
which also cool. Yeah, which again, like the story is a lot of lore from India.
A lot of culture we're not used to seeing games about.
Yeah, like we see a lot of stuff about like Roman and things like that. And so to have something from India, it's like it's names you recognize kind of from like Final Fantasy uses some of them, things like Shiva and things like that. And it was just kind of it's like I feel like that's a direction I wouldn't mind seeing more of, and more story along that like Indian culture. Just it's one we haven't really explored much in the West, and it's quite fascinating, really. So I'm hoping we see some more good things out of that studio, and it seems like it sold pretty well.
Yeah,
it was received very well.
Sure.
People were very hyped about it.
Yeah. So hopefully we see more out of them, and hopefully they've gotten a nice little shot of money. They're doing pretty well now, and hopefully they can even bring in a few extra people in on the team. I'm really interested to see what they do with the series and where they go with it next.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet, but it is on my radar. But I'll agree with you. I don't think we've seen the last game from them. After all this success, I think there will be more for sure.
If there's an indie sale going on, take a look and see if Raji's in it, because very interesting game.
Absolutely. So just checking the chat here. Taker610. The new Switch or Switch Pro has to come out. Too much smoke for no fire. I mean, I made a video about this, kind of to bring up all the different things, or a lot of the different things, suggesting a Switch Pro is around the corner. I'm in agreement with that. I do think that its potential release could be delayed a little bit because of the whole pandemic situation. So that's one thing to sort of take into consideration here. We may not see an announcement early in the year. I want to see an announcement early in the year, but we may have to wait a little bit for that. But I am still in agreement that a Switch Pro is fairly likely. There's a lot of different reasons. One of which being the number of Bloomberg reports. We've also seen some information talking about new panels being looked into and developed for the Switch as well. We've seen NVIDIA hire people to work on next generation hardware or new hardware that would be using DLSS 2.0. So all of these different things sort of, it seems like it's all kind of coming together. And the Bloomberg report, it talks about a number of things that seems a little lofty if you don't know about all the details. Like one of the things it said, and there's a few different reports, but basically what we've been seeing from Bloomberg is that they're saying that 4K capabilities, there's a lot of games coming out here. It's going to have improved screen technology. And a lot of these things seem like really nice. But the big one that people are sort of skeptical of is the whole 4K thing. But once you look into what NVIDIA's been working on and DLSS 2.0, and that they are actually hiring people to work on new hardware, and when you take into consideration that NVIDIA is the actual company that makes the hardware for the Switch, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more feasible, and that Bloomberg report starts to make sense. So we take that into consideration, and the fact that Nintendo is going to release more revisions. We have not seen the end of that. If you look at the way they handled all of their handhelds, they're going to do more revisions. They've been treating the Switch like a handheld in terms of what they've been doing to the revision. We saw the Switch Lite, we saw the version 2.0, or whatever you want to call it, but an updated version of the base Switch. More are coming. Even the firmware has suggested more are coming. So I think it's happening. There's a whole bunch of other reasons, but that's just kind of like some of the surface reasons right there. It just makes sense. Is it going to be like this super powerful like PS5 competitor? No, it's going to be a hybrid device, but it's going to be an improvement upon what we have right now. Do you guys
as far as the too much, like so much smoke for no fire?
Yeah.
This smoke has been since 2017. Since before launch, we've been hearing about these things, and as soon as it launched, people are like, oh, there's a pro coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I can't credit anyone with being right at this point when they've been calling for it for 4 years. It doesn't count. It's like me saying, oh, PlayStation 6 is coming, and in a few years, just if I keep saying it, it's like, oh, see, I was right. Like, we pretty much know there's going to be some form of enhanced Switch coming. How far it goes, we don't know.
Right, yeah.
Everything that NVIDIA has been hiring for, all these things, it can all be a refresh, or it could be next gen. Like, we don't know, and we still have another 4-ish years of Switch,
right?
Maybe 2 before we see even a next gen system, and then they support for 2 years after, which I believe that's how long the 3DS was supported. Was that right?
We saw games come out in 2019 for it. I think 2019
it was supported
like
for like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm pretty sure they supported at least in a very like conserved way. They supported the 3DS for about 2 years after the Switch came out before they finally stopped full support of it.
Yeah.
So I could see something coming in 2 years. I could see something coming in 3 or 4 years. as far as like a next gen goes, but all this could be for next gen. The screen technology could be for next gen.
That is something that's important to know. I think that's a good point, because the thing is, next generation hardware, the development for that, the R&D for that starts pretty much immediately when a console comes out. Like, they've been working on the Switch successor from day one of the Switch's lifespan.
Yeah, and one interesting thing, so there was an article back when the Wii was out, I remember reading, and they were talking about when Nintendo is at their best is when they take old technology and repurpose it. So the Wii, the technology for the motion control in the Wii was not new. That was definitely not new technology. They just took it and they took old technology, which was cheap, and they repurposed it. So for Nintendo, it does not surprise me if they are checking out prices and keeping an eye on prices, and even ordering screens just to see how well it goes with their, like how well it works with the hardware that they're developing, because they're probably gonna go through a few. They're gonna have a bunch of different iterations. They're not gonna use one screen and just keep putting it in the next iteration. Right. So it's a money and time intensive thing. So I think there's going to be an enhanced version of the Switch. I feel like that is almost a given. It's just how it works. Old technology is only cheap for so long, and then it becomes expensive.
That's what happened with the Switch. Is why they did the refresh in the first place.
Yeah, and
the original chip just was more expensive to make.
And like we see that all the time. We see that in different fields. I used to work at a hospital. We all had pagers. After I left the hospital, I think it was like within a year, they dropped pagers because they were too expensive, and it was cheaper to give everyone iPhones. So just keep those little things in mind. Like, that's crazy. Old technology becomes expensive, so they will use new technology to replace it. So if nothing else, I expect a refresh of the Switch using slightly newer technology that has now become cheaper than what is in the Switch currently.
At the very least. I personally see like a new 3DS sort of situation. It's just kind of... It's been enough time since the Switch has come out to have like a premium version or a deluxe version or what have you. 4 years, I feel like, is a healthy amount of time to wait before doing that, so fans don't feel burned. We are in that window where I think a mid-gen refresh would happen. Like, if we go past this year, I think we're past the window of having a mid-gen refresh. Like, 2021 is a year that would happen. So if it doesn't happen, then we're not getting a Switch Pro. We might get a refresh for the hardware to some extent, but I wouldn't expect like a Switch Pro, because we're going to have to get a next generation Switch after a certain point too. They're going to have to move on, and if they wait much longer past 2021, at that point it'll be kind of weird. Like, imagine if Sony announced PS4 Pro, and then literally just 1 year later they announced PS5. No, there has to be a little bit more of a window, maybe 2 to 3 years. Like, that's more of a healthy window for announcing like a mid-gen refresh system than the actual next generation system. So I'm just saying that if we're getting Switch Pro, which I do believe we're getting something along those lines, 2021 is it.
What I'll say is the technology is 100% there. It's just up to if Nintendo feels like they want to do it, if they feel like they can sell it, essentially. And I think NVIDIA is definitely the best partner that they could have chosen for this. Their mobile technology is just so much farther ahead than AMD's is. And they have so many different technologies, especially since their initiative into ray tracing. Since it was so expensive, they made so many great technologies to offset that cost that can easily be used in the Switch. So things like DLSS, which give you essentially 80% more free performance, right there, while looking sometimes even better than native resolutions. There's a lot of technologies that NVIDIA has pioneered that I think Nintendo would be crazy not to use. Now, whether they decide to use it now or wait 2 years to do a next-gen Switch that just completely overhauls everything is up to them. But as you said, like, they are kind of treating the Switch as a handheld first. The Switch is essentially a handheld that can be used as a console, more than it's a console that can be used as a handheld. and they are treating it that way with their revisions currently. I mean, you never saw something like a Switch Lite out of any of their consoles. That just never would have happened. So it definitely feels like they're treating it more as a handheld, and we saw so many upgrades like the 3DS XL and the new 3DS. So it would make sense that we would get some kind of upgrade. Now, I'm not thinking it's going to be something mind-blowing. I think DLSS is probably one of the biggest things, since it is kind of essentially free performance wins. But I think it will be, since NVIDIA has technologies that give you such free performance wins, I think it will be big in that aspect.
Now, I do have one question for the two of you.
Sure.
Since we are discussing the idea of a Switch Pro, with the Series S being as cheap as it is, how hard do you think it is to sell a $400 or $450 Switch Pro?
Oh, they would never go that high. I think the highest they would go is about $350. I think that's compatible range.
And how much of a jump can you really do you think they can really give at like just bumping it up $50?
Oh, a lot. I definitely think they can do it a lot. There's a lot of technology that's just, I mean, you got to look at how old the technology is in the Switch. It's from 2015, and even then it wasn't the greatest thing ever. NVIDIA we haven't seen them push gaming tech since then.
It's also not a heavily customized, like the base Switch is not a very customized like setup. Like it's like basically it's like a stock chip. Like Tegra X1, right, or something like that.
It was the original like launch Switch was a Tegra X1, and this is like
I have this article up to read, but there's like ads playing, so that's why there's this random audio clips popping in. Let me just read this real quick.
Yep.
Because I want to get this. I want to get off this website, but there's this body of text I want to read here. So and I'm curious what you guys have to say on this. But some people are saying that with a recent interview with Polygon, Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, has deconfirmed the Nintendo Switch Pro. So I'm going to read what he said here, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And then we'll come back to the whole pricing situation. And then we'll get back to the chat. Okay, so I know. This has become the Switch Pro topic from just a question, but it's fine. All right, here we go. Let me just break it down. First, we're always looking at technology. And as we know, this is Doug Bowser, just for the record. Technology is constantly evolving and changing. Oh, God. Stop. I hate this website. Anyway. And,
Never run dry of non-stop hydration. Neutrogena Hydro Boost.
Yeah.
Nope.
Or just right-click on the tab and hit mute site.
Is that you can mute sites?
Yes, on just... Of course you can mute sites.
Oh, look at that. Mute site. Oh, I just learned something new.
Oh, my God.
Thanks for telling me that. Oh, my God.
You're welcome.
I'm not
just
embarrassed.
Imparting wisdom.
I'm not embarrassed.
There we go.
All right. Now I'm going to read it. Here we go. Okay. Let me just break it down. He was asked about a Switch Pro, okay? First, we're always looking at technology. And as we know, technology is constantly evolving and changing. And we're always looking at what is coming to determine how can it enhance and improve the gameplay experience. And whether that's on a current platform or whether it's on a future platform, we're always looking at that. However, we also see right now, and we just talked about it, that the momentum on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite in the 4th year is strong, and we believe we're changing the trajectory of another typical console life cycle, and we will continue for the foreseeable future to really lean into both these platforms and the content that comes with it, because it's the symbiotic relationship that makes the real difference, and it's why Nintendo Switch is so differentiated. First, the hardware form factor obviously is something that you can have a gaming system that you can play at home as a console and you can take on the go and play in a handheld mode virtually anywhere. Is unique and remains unique within the industry. But then the way we build games onto the platform and the way partners build games onto the platform is really what matters and the experience that you have when you play. So that's what we'll continue to lean into as we go into really what will be the 5th year of Nintendo Switch. And as Mr. Shuntaro Furukawa, president of Nintendo, mentioned in his corporate management policy briefing, we believe we're just at the midpoint of this life cycle on the platform. So people have been seeing this and sort of saying, oh, Doug Bowser deconfirmed Switch Pro. I don't...
When?
Bowser didn't confirm or deny. He basically gave the PR answer that Reggie gave every time he was ever asked. I mean, that's nothing. He basically just said nothing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of words though. Did a good job stretching that out.
All I heard was blah 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 blah.
Okay.
Nintendo looks at technology. Shocker.
Like, they're gonna have other revisions. Is it gonna be a Switch Pro like with 4K capabilities? That's where the real debate is. But there's gonna be more revisions. You can book that. They're just gonna be. They've done historically. That's what they've done. They're gonna continue to do that. So that part I don't really feel like is that much of a stretch. And to you guys' point, like, PR answers are PR answers. We've seen deconfirmations of things weeks before they're actually announced, repeatedly. So I don't really think this means much at all in terms of deconfirming anything. And he didn't even say no. Like, there have been PR that has said no to something happening and then it actually happens. He didn't even say no. So I don't consider this a deconfirmation at all. It really is just more of a roundabout way of saying is that, hey, look, we're always looking at things and how we can continue to improve, but what we got right now is really good. Now, of course, what you have right now is really good, but part of what makes it so good is that they have created variety. They have differentiated already. So how can you continue to improve upon that? Build upon the momentum you already have, but also continue to differentiate. You get out a Switch Pro, what do? You're creating another SKU that's going to appeal to a slightly different audience. The same way the Switch Lite appeals to a slightly different audience from the base Switch. And really all you're doing is a sort of a like teasing or appetizing fans who want to double dip, and then also for people who've always wanted a more powerful system and never felt like the Switch was at that right level, but a Switch Pro might be, you know? So there's a lot of potential there for additional sales. So I don't really see how it takes away from Nintendo's plan at all. And again, like as you guys said already, it really is just PR talk.
Furukawa, I think it was last year, straight up told investors, no, there will not be a revision to the Switch this year. There will be no new hardware.
Right.
That is shutting it down.
Yes, and he was right. And since he said that back in January, right, like, my expectations have been for no revision in 2020. But
like
that doesn't mean there won't be any in 2021. Now, if he comes out again and says, hey, there's not going to be a revision this year either, okay, then, you know...
Wait, let's just... If he says it to investors...
Right.
There's a difference between saying it to a publication, saying it to someone asking him in an interview, and saying it to investors. There's a very big difference.
Right, because
that's a really good point.
You can't just lie to your investors about what's happening in the year. Like, that's not going to fly.
And just to point that out as well, what Doug Bowser said is something that they would totally say to investors to not show their hand.
Yeah.
So he did not say, like, it's nothing. He said nothing.
You can bluff to an investor, but you can't straight up lie to them.
Yeah.
Makes
you
sense.
Can basically tell them we are looking at things, but we have nothing to announce, is essentially what they would say.
Makes sense.
And that's basically what he said. We always look at things, but we're not announcing anything right now. So wait for an announcement. We'll talk about it when it happens.
Going back to the whole pricing thing, the reason I think $350 makes sense is I essentially think that this will be sort of like the new 3DS, where it comes out and it's a bit more expensive than the base unit, and it starts off as a premium thing, but after a while, it essentially just overtakes the original as the Switch, essentially. Because I don't think it's going to be something that takes massive leaps. I think DLSS is going to be one of the main things that makes it better. Probably a better CPU or an extra, maybe 2 gigabytes of RAM or something to help it out. But it's not going to be something where the hardware itself is actually super duper powerful, I think it's going to be a lot of software and things that are, smart ways of getting the most performance out of it, which is what NVIDIA does best. So that's kind of what I'm expecting, because I don't think that they can sell a Switch for $400, $450. It's not going to sell. Nobody's going to buy that. Maybe the hardcore will, obviously, but I think an actually $350 Switch would sell to a mass audience, which is what they do with their revisions on their handhelds. They sell whether it's a marginal upgrade, but it sells to a mass audience. And I think that NVIDIA has the perfect technologies to make a jump that's significant enough to give people satisfaction without actually having to make it way more expensive.
Yeah.
See, to me, it just I feel like it's a hard sell to offer anything a generation behind that costs more than what's out there now.
That's what they did with the normal Switch. Let's be honest.
But it could play. But it was playing.
They were selling.
But they were playing current generation games on it.
Right.
Maybe not the best, but they were.
How many games did they get anyways? And it's not like every next-gen game is next-gen exclusive anyways. They're still coming to the current generation for the most part. There are exclusive games, but those are ones that are being built specifically with next-gen in mind, and most games aren't doing that yet.
And I think the most important thing to note is that it's still going to be a hybrid system, meaning there's a whole handheld portion. And when you're paying for something that it's handheld, it's mobile, you have a lower expectation of power because it's a portable device. So even if they come out with a $350 system and it's technically weaker than a $300 Series S,
right,
because it's portable, it still has a lot more value.
Right. There was a ton of people questioning whether the Switch was going to sell because, Black Friday sales were selling PS4s at the time for $250 or even $200, and the Switch comes out and it's like way weaker for $300, and a lot of people were like, man, this is gonna sell, nobody's gonna buy this garbage. And no, it sold amazingly, and I think the same thing will happen with the Switch Plus.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not sure what the pricing is gonna be. I think $349.99 is probably the highest they should go, but I could also see them going for $300. I guess what really makes things weird is if they do that, what are they going to do with the base Switch? Like, how much will they discount that one? And what will they do for the Switch Lite? Like, if they go for the $349.99, at that point, okay, maybe you discount the base Switch to $249.99 and maybe Switch Lite to $149.99. Like, that kind of makes sense. But maybe they want to keep it at a clean, like, $100. At that point, what do they do? Well, I've seen some people suggest that maybe they just phase out the current Switch. If you look at how Nintendo handled the new 3DS, that kind of became like the new 3DS XL became like the main 3DS version, and the old 3DS sort of was phased out after a little while.
Exactly.
So that may happen with whatever this revision is as well. But I'm just kind of really curious how Nintendo's going to present it, if that will happen immediately or if it'll be like a slow process.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see it come out. But one thing I will definitely agree with, though, is I think they're going to lean heavily on DLSS.
Yeah.
I mean,
is that a prediction? Because this is a predictions discussion, guys. So let's make a prediction for Switch Pro. Okay. I'll let you guys go first with your prediction. So I guess tell me when you think it's coming out, basically what it is, and if there's any games coming out alongside of it.
Okay. I'll go first.
Okay.
I think it's going to be $350. I think it will have a good CPU upgrade, and it will have DLSS to help with the GPU upgrade. And it will launch alongside Breath of the Wild 2 because I think that game, even from the trailer we saw, looks like it's gonna step above graphical fidelity wise compared to the original. So I think they're gonna want the extra power to get that up to 4K on the Switch Plus, and it's just the best game. I think they launched the original, Switch alongside Breath of the Wild. Why not launch a enhanced one alongside Breath of the Wild 2?
When do you think it's coming out?
Holiday.
So you think we're gonna have to wait until holiday for the Switch revision to come out alongside Breath of the Wild 2?
Yes.
But it's gonna have DLSS 2.0 and a better CPU.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That would be nice. What do you think, Dumo?
Oh, price-wise is tough. I could see it being $350 or $400. I'd say it's probably closer to the power of an X2. I would say it would release in summer, and it would be just simply to get it out and get it on the market, and then have the next wave come through for holiday, so they could have a larger stock for holiday. Would be my expectation.
Okay.
That's also a fair reasoning.
What games do you think will come out for it? Like, they normally have some sort of game come out with any revision.
I don't think they even need to. But at the same time, there's so many games coming out.
When I say like come out a lot,
they could
like
release
whatever.
it.
Go on.
They could release it with without the expectation of anything specific being released with it. But I think there's going to be a bunch of stuff that got pushed back from last year to this year. So I think there's going to be multiple games, possibly even third party, floating around the release of it.
Okay, that's fair. So if you guys have watched my video on the prediction, you kind of know what I'm maybe already getting at here. But in 2015, new 3DS XL came out in North America, February. When it came out and it was marketed with Majora's Mask 3D and Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Both those came out in the same month, and there were commercials with both those games for the new 3DS XL. In 2019, Switch Lite came out September, and in that month, we had two major published Nintendo games, one of which being Dragon Quest XI S. Nintendo put a lot of money to get Square to make that game run on Switch and have a lot of extra bells and whistles, and it's the best version of Dragon Quest XI S, or 11, and also Link's Awakening Remake. You see a trend here? I mean, it's only two, but big third-party game, some sort of Zelda remaster, rework. So, what I'm thinking is, and of course, I think the wrench in my plan here, which is why I'm afraid my prediction will be wrong, is because I think the pandemic will have delayed things. But I think, assuming the pandemic has not created that much of a delay, I actually expect the Switch revision to come out this March, alongside Monster Hunter Rise and the Skyward Sword HD, which will be announced either next month or the month after for Zelda's anniversary. And I'm thinking the price will be, I mean, I wish I could give you I could put out a number, and it's really just a guess, but it's somewhere between $300 and $350. Actually, you know what? Yep. I'm changing that. Somewhere between $300 and $400. If the Switch revision is $400, then this is like some sort of monster deluxe system, but it probably isn't. It's probably closer to $300. That's my prediction, and it's probably
again, like it's one of those ones we can make predictions all day. We'll never come close to what actually happens.
It's gonna come out like in August, and it's gonna be $289.99, and it's gonna launch alongside of Mario Strikers and a port of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
It's gonna end up being a Switch VR, a dedicated Switch VR headset. Man. That's what's gonna happen, and that's why the two-screen thing was a thing.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
I mean, there could be two Switch revisions next year. There doesn't just have to be one. So
honestly, I would love a Switch VR because I love Breath of the Wild in VR, but the resolution is just so low.
Hey, maybe with DLSS on.
Yeah.
A Switch Pro could turn it into something a little bit easier to
Hopefully
to play.
We get a 1080p screen on there.
Now, on the idea of a second revision, if they are going to actually replace the original Switch with an enhanced Switch and phase out the original, would they not have to do that also? Or would you not kind of expect that as well with the Lite, seeing as you also had the new 2DS XL phasing out the old 2DSs?
It's very possible.
Actually, Dumo, you were talking about how the current Switch may go on like for another 4 years, but 2 years from now they come out with the next generation, maybe 2 to 2.5, right, depending on exactly when. But 4 to 4.5 years from now, they come out with the next generation Switch. Well, no, not that. I'm wrong. 2 to 2.5 years from now, they come out with the next generation Switch, right? But perhaps around the same time, they also come out with a Switch Lite improvement as well, kind of like the new 2DS to your point, so they can push the lifespan of the current Switch for a couple more years. Because what they may do is they may use the Switch as kind of more of like a portable system, while the next generation Switch may be more of a system that's meant for people who want the closer to that traditional home console experience, but still has a portable option. Which is kind of basically what the Switch Lite is already, you know, like it's like that cheaper portable option, but you know, just to kind of improve upon it. Like it does make sense. I think they could do that. It could hit like that 3DS roll 4 years from now or so.
I could see it.
Yeah. maybe. But let's actually get to the chat now, because we got to one, and it turned into a Switch Pro discussion. But we covered that part, so we
had to go over it sometime.
It
worked out. It worked out.
Yeah, for sure. We got two birds in one stone. We got to a question, and we did a whole topic and our prediction. Yeah. So we're getting there. All right, so Mr. Goha added me. Merry Xmas and Happy New Year. Hope we'll get a better year with Nintendo games. Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you as well. I am definitely thinking next year is going to be very strong. Armchair Analysis. You also have Hades, but that's a non-exclusive indie game. Well, yeah, it's a pretty good game. I think this is from earlier in the discussion when we were talking about like Game of the Year. Ronnie Fazio. My Switch Game of the Year is definitely Animal Crossing. It was my first in the series, and I've put possibly an unhealthy number of hours in it. I also got all my holiday recipes. Nice.
Nice, dude.
Very nice.
Mr. Goha, do you think this is possible? Get Pikmin 4 this year, 2021. What Sonic game do you think we'll get this year? So I do think there's probably a Sonic game in the works. There usually is. I'd like to see a new 3D Sonic game. I'll tell you that there's usually some sort of ground-up Sonic game made for Nintendo systems, oftentimes more than one. So I'm looking forward to seeing a brand new ground-up Sonic game on Nintendo Switch. I'm not saying it's for sure going to happen, but if announced next year, that wouldn't shock me either. In terms of if I think we'll see Pikmin 4,
who knows? You might as well ask for Mother 3 as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. You could make the argument, though, that because Pikmin 3 Deluxe came out this year, they could be using that to sort of, create an awareness for the brand, and hopefully when Pikmin 4
remind of its existence.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Or maybe they did sort of gauge interest.
True.
Yeah. I do think we'll see it someday. I don't know if next year is that year. Is the year, like, maybe I could see it coming out like 2022. It's definitely a possibility. It's one of the many games that could happen, but I wouldn't predict it for next year, but but it's definitely possible. Taker610 with a super chat. Thank you very much. Maybe start with Zelda 35th predictions for 2021. Well, tell you what. It's not going to be our first topic because we already had the Switch Pro topic, but we'll talk about Zelda very, very soon. Mr. Goha, have you heard about the rumor about Banjo-Kazooie? No. A recent rumor? Lay it on me. I love me some Banjo-Kazooie rumors.
Oh yeah.
Ronnie Fazio, what do you gentlemen think about the idea of Bill Riser and Lance Bean from Contra being DLC fighters for Smash Ultimate? Contra characters? You know what? That's just crazy enough that I think it could work.
Perhaps. I know nothing about Contra.
I mean, Contra. So. The thing is that Contra is definitely like a classic franchise. It's a franchise that a lot of people have played before. Recognizable. They could definitely pull from there. Now, there's a lot of gun shooting, but it is Toon-like, so I think they can get away with it for sure. I think it's a great idea. It's kind of left field, in my opinion, but I think at this point, you should expect left field for Smash Brothers. After Sephiroth, and Steve,
what's left to do but left field? I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
So that Contra,
yeah,
that's known. Like that's, I can't remember when the last time there was a Canadian note, like a dollar bill, might have been a $10 bill or something that was announced by the government in their website. If you put in the Contra code, like an animation happened. Oh my
gosh.
Contra is, and specifically like the Contra code is just like that's a very major part of gaming history at this point. I could definitely see something Contra coming.
I know very little about Contra. I know it's a big deal. I just don't know much about it. So, I mean, if it comes into Smash, maybe I'll learn some more about it. I don't know.
It'd be a great ranged character. That's for sure. Pain Fat Purple. If we get an upgrade in 2021, when can we expect the next gen Super Nintendo Switch? So, we kind of touched on it already, but my expectation is about 2 years after release for this Switch revision. So hypothetically, Well, 2023 is really is the year. Like latest I expect is early 2024, like the latest. But I'm thinking 2023, somewhere between March and November of 2023. That's when I think we'll see the next generation Switch come out.
I think 2023 is possible, but to be honest, I could definitely see holiday 2024 if they... It depends on how big a revision this more powerful Switch is, so...
They want 8 years. I feel like 2024 is probably the safer bet, although I could see 2023. I don't think they're gonna do a full 8 years before they release new hardware. I think it will be because they never said we will run with the Switch exclusively for 8 years. They said we will support it for 8 years.
Yeah.
And that was the expectation. So I could see 6-7 years a new console generation comes out, and then again they support, because they never stopped supporting the Wii. They never stopped supporting the 3DS. They never, like, when something's selling and doing really well, you keep making money off it. You don't just throw it away.
Sure, but I want to point out that Nintendo's kind of already given us the answer, I think. And it obviously comes down to how you interpret it, and whatever they're thinking now is always subject to change for sure. But they've already told us that the Switch is about halfway through its life cycle. We are about 3.5 years into the life cycle, was reported a few months ago. So if you multiply 3.5 by 2, what do you get? 7 years. When did the Switch come out? 2017. So, like late 2023, early 2024, that's kind of close, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Around then, I think we'll get the next generation Switch. But we'll see what happens. We don't know. I think one thing though that I want to point out, since we're talking about this, is Metroid Prime 4. Because Metroid Prime 4 is probably not coming out next year. If it happens, thank God. But probably not, because we haven't gotten anything Metroid at all talked about. And there's other Metroid stuff in the works, supposedly. I think some people are starting to believe that it's going to become like a cross-gen release. But I personally don't think that would be a good idea for this series. Metroid Prime 4 is not a Zelda. It's not a Super Mario. I don't think it's the kind of game that would do well to be a cross-gen release. Maybe Metroid Prime 5, after Metroid Prime 4 sort of establishes the Metroid Prime franchise for the modern era. But I think Metroid Prime 4 needs to be like a Switch exclusive. So the timing of it is really important. So if Metroid Prime 4 can make it out for 2022, and then we're not really talking about next generation Switch until like late 2023, that's a healthy window, I think, for that game before we start moving on to the next generation systems. And maybe at that point they're already working on the sequel, or maybe they could have some sort of remastered Game of the Year edition. I just want to point that out because I do think when the next generation Switch comes out, that does kind of put pressure on retro studios to sort of consider, should we make this a cross-gen game or not? But personally, I feel like it kind of needs to come out on Switch just because that's what we've been waiting for all this time.
You never know what's going to happen in the next generation. Look at what happened from the Wii to the Wii U. The game was already deep into development. They were talking about a possible release date coming up soon, and then they restarted development. There is a lot of money going into it. I think they will dump a lot of resources into making sure it comes out on the Switch. Well, the Switch is doing very well and healthy, because you don't know what's going to happen next gen.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason it doesn't take off next gen, maybe they maybe they fumble something. It completely screw up next gen.
Could be a Wii U.
And now you have a game that has been worked on for an entire generation that comes out and doesn't sell anything.
That's the thing. The Switch
I don't think they can have it.
Right. There's been so much success on Switch. Like, everything is doing well here. This is the time to revive the Metroid franchise and make it become a constant, stable franchise. Another one of those big, important franchises that Nintendo can go back to every couple of years. The same way we see Zeldas and Fire Emblems and Marios and Animal Crossings and Smashes and Mario Karts consistently. If Nintendo does this well, if they hit it out of the park, Metroid Prime will become another one of those franchises. And I know a lot of you Metroid fans are like, man, the idea of getting a new Metroid Prime every 3 to 5 years would be really nice, right? Well, this is Nintendo's chance, Retro Studios' chance to make that happen. If Metroid Prime 4 establishes a strong audience on Switch, that's going to become a consistent franchise. That's what I think. So it's another reason why I feel like it's healthy to get Prime 4 out in a reasonable time before we start moving on to next generation system. Not saying it wouldn't be able to succeed as a cross-gen release. I just feel like you don't really want to mess with that. But we'll see what happens.
You know it's going to be successful if it comes out. If it comes out and it is a good game, it's going to be successful on Switch.
Yeah.
If it comes out and it's an amazing game on the next-gen platform and it, for whatever reason, doesn't take off, you lost a lot of money and a lot of opportunity.
Cross-gen, you would be on both platforms. I don't think cross-gen would hurt it in any way. I honestly think that could be a good idea. It just is if the game even needs to take that long to get out, you know? I kind of feel like it should be done before then.
I would hope.
Unless they just really want to take their time. But the other Metroid Prime games took, 2 years to make? And even if you consider, an HD development, maybe they want to make a bigger game this time. They have a bigger studio as well. So you think in, 3 years, 4 years tops, they'd be getting this game out?
I don't know. Whenever a game goes beyond 5 years of development time, I get very nervous over it.
Yeah.
Because usually that means that there was a lot of issues in development. And for a game that's already been
usually makes for
shut down and restarted
experience.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's one of the other thing to think about too on a cross-gen is it might not hurt Switch sales, but at the same time, you don't do cross-gen because you want the Switch sales. You do cross-gen because you want to try to push people to the next generation and make some extra money while you're at it. And it's tough if a lot of people are just not interested in the next gen and you have this big game that's just sitting there. It worked well with Breath of the Wild, but at the same time,
it's Zelda. Zelda is an established franchise that everyone
Zelda
wants.
and
I don't understand what you guys are saying, because if it comes out cross-gen, it still comes out on the normal Switch.
I mean,
it still has the same install base, so it doesn't hurt it at all to come out on the next-gen Switch as well. It makes essentially no difference other than now it's coming out on 2 platforms instead of just the one.
I understand what you're saying, and you may be right that it's coming out on both. Both is more. More is better. To an extent, I think you're right, but I just kind of think that you want to make sure it comes out on Switch when Switch is thriving. And I think that's the real point. It's not so much that cross-gen would hurt it. And I think that's probably a poor way of wording it. So I'll give you that one, Brandon. But I think the real thing to consider here, as Dumo appropriately noted, is that the Switch is doing really well right now. It's not on its way out where sales are starting to dwindle. It's thriving right now. So you want to get Metroid Prime 4 out while Switch is thriving, while sales are very strong. If you get Metroid Prime 4 out once the Switch is kind of already finishing, and then this next generation Switch comes out and it ends up bombing too, then you're in a situation where, it's a cross-gen release and it came out on Switch, but it's coming out at the end of its life cycle when sales are dwindling. And it comes out on this next generation system that's not guaranteed to succeed, where sales could also flop potentially. I'm just saying that the best scenario for the Switch, for Metroid Prime 4, is for it to come out when Switch is thriving and not trending downwards. So if they take too long, then it could. Now I think we've made sense of it.
All right. Yeah, I understand now.
Yeah,
I was a bit confused.
I didn't word it correctly earlier, so I'm glad you did that, because now hopefully people listening will now understand the point we're trying to make. So
different thought processes, and sometimes the words don't come out right. So it's always good to see it from a different point of view and clarify things, hopefully a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So Reese's Pieces, I somewhat agree with that, but to play devil's advocate, if Metroid were to release at the tail of Switch's life cycle, we could get another Samus Returns scenario. Yeah, that kind of highlights the point I'm making. Samus Returns, had it came out sooner, when we weren't already excited about the Switch, timing's really important, I think. So, we'll see. And I understand if Samus Returns came out on the base Switch, on actual Switch as opposed to just 3DS, it also would have done really well. So, it's kind of hard to say there. Yeah, to just kind of complete what Reese's Pieces was saying, where Samus Returns released right as 3DS momentum started to die down, and it sold okay-ish. Yeah. Beverly Carter, question: do you think quote from Cave Story as third-party icon gaming character could come in Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm not familiar with Cave Story too much, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So,
Cave Story is another one of those indie success story kind of games. So, I mean, I feel like it's one of those games that has potential for like a Mii costume, but probably not a character.
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with that.
That makes sense. That I would agree with that possibly. I'll say that it's not that I don't think Mii costumes. I mean, not Mii costumes. Indie characters can't like theoretically become like the next big playable character for Smash Brothers. I just don't think it's like super likely, because if you look at the characters that are in the Fighters Pass, and I just made a video talk about like fan rules and things of that nature. Like, so I'm not trying to say there's any set particular rule that's like, no, that can't happen, right? But my impression is that I don't really expect any indie characters to make it into the final 3 spots for the Fighters Pass. I'm expecting either Nintendo characters or characters from third-party games that have a major publisher behind it, because it does seem like there's some sort of deal in hand between a major publisher and Nintendo. Microsoft, Square, Capcom, things like that. And actually, say, Dumo, now that I have you here, I haven't done my Smash predictions for 2021 yet, so it's kind of a spoiler for that video. But I am kind of thinking that one of the final 3 characters is going to be a Capcom character. I think there's still a couple Capcom Mii costumes left, and we've been seeing this trend where some of the remaining Mii costumes for Smash for Wii U that have not come out are coming out when that company has their pack. We were thinking this before Sephiroth. Sephiroth came from Final Fantasy VII. Square. What happened? We got the remaining Square Mii costumes that were missing. There are some Capcom Monster Hunter Mii costumes missing right now. And what is a really big game that Nintendo is hard pushing right now? Monster Hunter Rise. They had its own dedicated direct. It had a spot at the Game Awards. Nintendo's continued pushing it on social media. This is a big game. I think you agree with me, Dumo, that this could potentially be the best-selling third-party game on Switch. So with all of that in mind,
yeah,
Nintendo may very well want to push this and market it. We've seen them do it before. They don't always do it, in fairness. So just because it makes sense from a marketing perspective doesn't mean that they're going to make a character there. But when you consider that on top of the whole Mii costume situation, and that it seems like Capcom would be a strong candidate to get a character in there, I'm honestly thinking that the Monster Hunter Rise main character could be one of the next playable characters in the Fighters Pass.
The problem is like the main character is you. Like it's a self-made, like full character creation.
Let me counter though. In the trailer, we did see that character talk. He had some voice acting.
Okay.
There does seem to be a little bit more personality there. It is still a customizable avatar, true, but we've seen a little bit more. There's a little bit going on with the moveset and such. I think there's a little bit more moveset potential here. There does seem to be a little bit more of a narrative focus, and because of that, I think it can maybe happen. And also, I'll bring up Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses, which was also a very hard marketing push for Fire Emblem, is kind of a very similar character to a Monster Hunter character. Kind of a blank slate, doesn't really talk kind of thing. So I think it could happen.
Okay.
Like, I would say it's the strongest candidate in my opinion.
Now, I could see that. I could also see the leader of the village. The elder.
Very strong design.
Sure.
He's an interesting design if he's a character that really comes front and center in the story and really kind of shows himself as just some big crazy warrior. Now, the only thing is he's a long sword, I believe. So you're talking about a lot of like, it's two-handed, long swooping sword, a lot of counters.
Right. I think it's
let me double counter
go with the base character, because then they can pull from any moveset that they want.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what they did with Byleth.
Now, my thing is, I don't think they would go longsword. So trying to think, I don't think they would go with one of the gunner weapons. Probably not hunting horn, hammer.
I'm kind of thinking they might go for like a Splatoon-like character, where each different move is actually a different type of weapon.
Okay.
I could see them going with dual blades because it's very popular.
Mm-hmm.
It's flashy, and then as far as like, so you have your dual blades kind of move set. I could see them actually having the wire bug and like incorporating that, but then you also have to remember they have like traps. Traps are a thing. I think that could be pretty interesting. They have a lot of interesting stuff they can do there if they include like tricks hunters can do besides just, you know, swinging swords. What other? I'm trying to think of what other weapons are. Oh, I could.
There's a lot. There's so much options. I mean, you could look at the wire bug situation. Like, there's just so much they can do with that in terms of moveset, I think.
I could also probably see Switch Axe too. Like Switch Axe would be, it's like not as popular, but it'd make for a very interesting thing that I feel like would probably be pretty different. I don't know if they could do Greatsword as awesome as that would be, just charging attacks. I don't think that would work quite as well.
I
but
think
it would
it's
be
most
interesting.
likely, at least in my opinion, they wouldn't go for just one. Even though that's how it works in the games, we've seen it with other characters like Splatoon. Yeah. You typically only equip one weapon. Yet in Smash, you use all the different weapon types for different moves. I think it makes a ton more sense to just pull from that. That way, you're really showcasing all of the different aspects of Monster Hunter instead of just one weapon, and it makes for the moveset to be so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Not to mention, there's already a Rathalos boss, so that's the classic mode runs very easy to kind of do. Like you just put some like giant mushrooms on some more animalistic characters, like Ridley, for example. It's so easy for them to create a classic run for this character. Lots of moveset potential, great marketing. I think it'll be a very fun character. And I don't think the press behind it will be as negative as Byleth was. So, I mean, we'll see, obviously. I'll also say that of all the third-party franchises that deserve to have a playable character in Smash Brothers, I feel like Monster Hunter is that franchise. It's like probably one of the most consistent, high-selling third-party franchises that is on Nintendo. And they don't have a playable character. Now they have the Rathalos is a boss assist trophy, which is unique. It's very cool, but just saying, like, there's not a playable character yet.
And just on that note, Monster Hunter right now is going into the Monster Hunter Rise. We're talking about Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, which is the largest selling Capcom game of all time. That is a long time to be selling games. It's got a lot of hype around it. It's again, World wasn't as big in Japan as it was in the West, but it was massive in the West. And Rise is already striking really huge in Japan, and Japan is like really excited. I feel like that's something that hits like pretty much all markets really, really well. Yeah, I could see them doing it. Just it pushes one of their IPs. It's already going to be big. Gets more people into it.
The Smash connection helps to bridge that Western gap a little bit more. But Monster Hunter World definitely made some strides, but on the Switch with all of its sales potential, you throw Smash in there, that can help a little bit more. I think Pain Fat Purple said Monster Hunter doesn't need Smash and Smash doesn't need Monster Hunter. There's not a need, just to be clear. Monster Hunter Rise is going to sell incredibly whether it's a Smash character or not. And I agree with that. But it doesn't mean they won't do it. It doesn't mean it won't help.
Right.
You could sell 50 million if you sell 51
needed Byleth to be in.
Right. But, you know, if you could turn that 50 million to 51, why not, right? Not saying Smash is going to sell 51 million copies. It's just the point is that if you can increase sales a little bit more and it's something that people will enjoy, why not do it?
Okay, it's a big property. People are really, really excited over it. So you're going to get people that are like Monster Hunter people that like fighting games and didn't really care, like weren't really looking at Smash, now looking at Smash. You're going to have Smash players that are just interested in, you know, the flashness of the Monster Hunter, and they're going to check out Monster Hunter. Like, there's no reason not to. Like, they have to do a character for Smash. So why not do one that makes them, that will increase sales and make them more money? Like, it just, to me, it makes sense. It's just whether or not they've wanted to go that way, and whether or not they have something they feel comfortable with releasing and putting in Smash. That's the big thing there.
Because a lot of times there will be things that just make perfect sense, and then Nintendo's like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also
there's also things that make no sense, and Nintendo's like, yeah, that's our goal.
There you go.
Okay.
Got it.
You do you.
Yeah.
They go to the beat of their own drum.
Yeah.
So Mr. Goha had alluded to a banjo rumor earlier. Mm-hmm. So he said to check out Steve Mails, who's at Winky Steve on Twitter. So I actually looked that up while you guys were talking about the moveset for this Monster Hunter character. So I'm going to go ahead and show this to you guys. I think it's interesting to say the least. So let me go ahead and show that to you guys here. Pop up. There we go. So, Steve Mails. I don't know who this is, but it looks like he used to be a part of the team that worked on Banjo.
I think they used to be part of Rare, yeah.
Yeah. When we were working on Banjo-Tooie, a certain game was released that involved Nintendo characters duking it out. 20 years later, it could well be the game that saved Banjo-Kazooie. What will next year bring for Bear and Bird? So, there's a couple different ways to look at this. One, you could be like, oh, he's teasing something. Why would he even talk about Banjo next year? Why can't you just say, oh, it's really great to see Banjo still being celebrated 20 years later? Like, that could be it, right? That's all he would need to do. But he's alluding to something in next year. You could also make the argument that he is just talking about this now, hoping because, well, it's the end of the year, and he's just sort of thinking, maybe, something else for Banjo's coming soon, just because it would be great to see this character that I worked on some time ago get something else going. It could go either way, so I'm not gonna like for sure like say, yeah, this guy's absolutely teasing something next year, but I'll also say that doesn't mean he's not teasing something next year. We have seen teases for things like this before, so I do think it's possible. And I'll say that when Banjo-Kazooie did come out in 2019, last year, there's a lot of speculation that something Banjo-Kazooie was around the corner. I don't think that's changed, actually. I think, well, I do think it's maybe changed a little bit. Like, there was a whole argument that maybe we'd see Rare Replay, and it could still happen. So I'm not entirely, like, confident that there's, like, a Banjo-Kazooie game in the works or something, but I do think there's a decent chance that could happen.
We have seen Microsoft starting to pick up their Rare IPs. I mean, Perfect Dark is set to release that at some point.
If they're going to do Perfect Dark, why not do Banjo?
Yeah.
The other thing is, does it come to Switch? Like,
I think Microsoft it would sell on Switch.
But Microsoft needs everything they can get right now. They just lost Halo Infinite out of their launch. Can they really afford to be giving away IPs at this point in time? They need to push.
I got an argument for you. Ready?
Go for it.
Okay, so there's been, and I've heard this is like from other people who have in sources. I'm not saying it's a personal source, but I've heard people talk about how there's been talks of getting Rare Replay and things like that on Switch. There's been discussions of getting potentially like the xCloud or some form of Game Pass on Switch. Like, there's been those conversations, but nothing's actually like happened. And it may never happen because of how picky Nintendo can be. But what if Microsoft and Nintendo are like, all right, let's find a way to make this work. Here's an idea. Let us have Banjo-Kazooie on Switch as well. Like this brand new Banjo-Kazooie game. Maybe we'll even help out. Maybe I'm probably, this is pipe dream right now, but let's just say that they are working on it and they allow it to come out on Switch as well. Because that would improve sales significantly. But that would be Nintendo saying, hey, if you let us have this game, we'll also let you put Game Pass on Switch. Like, there could be some sort of deal there, because Microsoft getting Game Pass on Switch would make them a lot of money. But if Microsoft gets Game Pass on Switch, the problem with that is that would kind of impact sales on all the other eShop offerings. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of deal in hand between Nintendo and Microsoft where maybe they also put a game like Banjo-Kazooie, which would sell really well on the Switch. Like, you have to agree with that. That like Banjo-Kazooie probably will sell way more on Switch than it will on an Xbox.
Oh, easily.
And I think that's why Microsoft would probably want to do it.
Yeah. That's not the argument at all. To me, it's platform building, and their platform is hurting right now.
I don't think it's hurting. I mean, we're seeing sales come out, and obviously Japan's Japan, but in the West, Xbox just has selling power. It's not up there with the PS4, but it's still really good.
It's a console launch. A console launch, unless you completely, you got to do pretty bad to not have
but
big
next year
console
they
launch
have
sales.
a ton of big games coming, and
As
we've already
long as
seen
they
that
come.
Microsoft isn't like super big on their platform in general. They kind of don't. I feel like they don't even think Xbox is that big of a deal for them, just because they're so strong on PC and on other platforms selling things, that a lot of their money comes from services and not the platform itself anyways. So I think they would see this as, our audience doesn't really care that much about Banjo-Kazooie, but Nintendo's would eat it alive. So I think that they would 100% be like, why would we not take like a 300% sales boost by putting it on the Nintendo Switch?
Like, here's the other thing: you do that, and it becomes a franchise that could become not just a one-off. It could become consistent, and that could become more of a steady income, an additional steady income flow for Microsoft. And they could still have the better version on Xbox. If you want to play Banjo-Kazooie in 4K, 60 frames per second, or 120 frames per second, you can on Xbox.
They've already talked about Bethesda games. They just bought Bethesda, but they did say that there will be Bethesda games still coming to Switch. They said it will be best and first on Xbox, but they did not rule out it coming to the Switch. They said they're still very open to that. So why would they buy Bethesda and be like, these games that would definitely help their platform, and still suggest that they're not going to be Xbox exclusives?
A lot of their new acquisitions for studios have contracts that pre-exist with other places, and we haven't seen all those contracts come out and run out yet.
Yeah.
So we don't know if they're going to it's like, okay, we're going to honor all the contracts so we have no issues, and then after that, it's ours.
But they
and it's
said
our
that
platform.
with the other companies, and they are not saying that with Bethesda. They confirmed that out of the gate with every single other company but Bethesda. But that's the only company that they're saying things that are different.
Here's an example,
they're only
actually.
wording it differently with Bethesda.
Consider this. So Bethesda's actually in a very similar situation to what Mojang was a while ago. Because Minecraft wasn't initially owned by Microsoft, but now it is, right? Granted, Minecraft was technically indie, right? But now that it's owned by Microsoft, it's not. That Minecraft is on Switch. Minecraft is on a whole bunch of platforms, but technically Microsoft owns it. Like, if they really, really wanted to, couldn't they just like not allow that to be on other platforms? But they do. And it's similar to Bethesda, because Mojang and Minecraft were something before Microsoft, but they bought them. Yet they still allow Minecraft to be on other platforms. I wouldn't be surprised if they handled Bethesda in a very similar way. And because
they were also very quiet about how they were handling it on PlayStation. They declined to comment on that specifically. So I wouldn't be surprised if they work well with Nintendo, but considering Microsoft and Sony's relationship is not very good, that they kind of were like, yeah, we're not putting it on your consoles.
Yeah, because the thing is, Microsoft does go more for high-fidelity entertainment system sort of device, while Nintendo goes for portable, flexible gaming device. Sometimes, though, there's still a lot of overlap with the games, but they are different enough that you can see a lot of people owning both. So Nintendo working with Microsoft, while they are technically competition, it's not necessarily bad for them to have games that they can share. So if any company is gonna actually allow for something like a Banjo-Kazooie to come out on the Nintendo system, it would be Microsoft. They've done it with other franchises. So if anything, this is the only way it could happen, right? I think it's possible. I don't know if it's not a for sure thing, right? We're really just speculating here, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I feel like the fight isn't so much getting Banjo onto Switch. I think it's hard to.
It's just at a certain point you want
to allow Game Pass.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Like, let's put it this way: that is easily the best deal in gaming right now.
I'm not even.
Games Pass is
that,
nuts.
by the way.
Yeah.
That's not even part of my thing. That's on Andre.
I'll say I'm just
theory.
spitballing here. I'm spitballing here, okay? Like I'm just spitballing. I know that there've been conversations supposedly, and maybe there's some sort of deal between Banjo and Rare, but I'm really just sort of like spitballing here. They may not be related at all. And kind of going back to the whole point of Game Pass, like I think the reason why it wouldn't happen is because since it is such a good deal, it would impact sales of other eShop offerings, which is why Nintendo may never do that. And they may also not want to have Microsoft have such control over sales on their own system or content on their own system. That's a whole other thing. So that can get a little tricky. But pushing that away, sorry I spitballed and considered that maybe there could be some sort of deal between them. The idea of Banjo itself coming to both Switch and Xbox in the future, like a whole new game, I don't think it's that far-fetched because of, if you look at what Microsoft does, they allow a lot of their games that they technically own be on other platforms. And we all agree that Banjo's going to sell way better on Switch than anything Xbox offers. So, we'll see. But moving on here, because we're actually, guys, we're an hour and a half in, and we've really only done one prediction section. I mean, we were talking about Smash Brothers. I guess you could say I had a prediction for Smash Brothers Monster Hunter. But let's now move on to Zelda. Gotta talk about Zelda sooner or later. It's a big deal. It's a big part of everything. So, what do you guys think is happening with Zelda? There's the whole 35th anniversary coming this February. Breath of the Wild 2 has been in development. There have been trademarks for a lot of Zelda merchandising. Do you guys think something is around the corner for Zelda beyond just Breath of the Wild 2? Just Breath of the Wild 2? More than it? What do you guys think is happening here?
It's supposed to be an annual series. What did we get last year?
Age of Calamity.
Which
and
was...
they did yeah. They didn't settle for the physical release of a DLC indie game that had Zelda characters in it, which is what a lot of people were thinking they were. But nope, last minute, we have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity still using that Zelda brand. So I am very, very committed to that belief that Nintendo will have at least one Zelda game per year. But this year is different. It is the 35th anniversary. We just saw what they did with Mario, and we saw a whole bunch of trademarks for Mario, which led to the 35th anniversary celebration with a number of Mario games. We've seen similar trademarks for Zelda, which I believe are leading to a whole bunch of Zelda 35th anniversary stuff as well. I'm not saying there's going to be a specific Zelda 35th anniversary direct in the same way, but I am thinking we're going to see more than one Zelda game come out in 2021. That's a prediction. More than one.
I feel like there is. The thing that scares me right now is just how much of development was impacted, because I feel like this was the year that they were planning on Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm terrified that it's going to get pushed out because of delays. I feel like I feel like Skyward Sword is the one that has been discussed that they hinted at, and I feel like we're getting Skyward Sword this year no matter what.
Yep.
It's just whether or not they managed to keep Breath of the Wild 2 within the year, which I really hope they did, and I really hope that's their push for holiday.
So let me give you my prediction. My Zelda prediction is there will be some sort of presentation early in the year, be it January or February, where they will discuss Zelda things. I don't know if it's going to be a Zelda Direct. I don't know if it's going to be a Nintendo Direct, but I think Zelda things will be discussed in either January or February. And what's going to come out this year for sure, there may be a number of little things, but the two big things I'm thinking, Skyward Sword HD in either February or March, and then later in the year, towards the holiday, Breath of the Wild 2. That's what I think is happening. And I think splitting them into two different parts of the year, two different halves, is how you do it, and I think it would actually work really well.
Going off of what we got for Mario's 35th anniversary, I think there will be a bunch of those smaller games to support Breath of the Wild 2. And I don't know, maybe this is expecting too much, but I really hope that Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD get a port to the Switch, because I think that would be super simple to do, and I think people would really appreciate it. I know I would buy both of them again.
I mean, I probably would too.
Oh, I would. I wouldn't even question it.
In a heartbeat, yeah.
My only thing is that, to Dumo's point earlier, Nintendo likes to do a consistent at least one Zelda per year sort of thing.
Right.
If they go and they just shoot everything out now, Breath of the Wild 2, Skyward Sword HD, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, and Ocarina of Time on the eShop. They just do all of that, and then they also throw a couple of the 2D Zelda games in there as well, Oracle of Seasons and Ages on the eShop. They just blow everything out this year. They're gonna run out of Zelda stuff for the coming year. So I think they're gonna say some of that, but I do think I'm gonna stick with my prediction, more than one Zelda game, and I'm siding with Skyward Sword HD mainly because if you go back to the Zelda concert a couple years ago, Eiji Numa literally said, okay, let me rephrase. Literally, I make this mistake sometimes. I say literally, and I'm really paraphrasing here.
Literally.
Yeah. But he said something very close to Skyward Sword on Switch, right? To an entire audience watching a Zelda concert. And then after that, there was a lot of press that sort of said, just brush it off. But that's PR. He would never. Either he's delusional, or he was saying something that was based off something he was working on at some point, or at least hoping for. So I think it's coming. I think it's the next in line. Like, we already got the remasters for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. It's the next one. With the Zelda 35th anniversary, it's going to be 10 years after Skyward Sword. Well, just under, because Skyward Sword came out at the end of 2011, but close enough. I think. I just think it's what makes the most sense.
Oh, I would love nothing more than to, at one point in time, be caught up with Zelda releases on the Switch. That would be, if I could at one point in time have access to every single Zelda on the Switch.
Oh yes.
Every single one that isn't, the one we don't want to talk about. That would be a dream for me. So, but again, I feel like they're gonna spread things out. I think we get 2. Brandon, you made it like that 35th anniversary makes a strong point too for a few.
Right. I think there's other
I don't
options other than Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD. I am 100% certain that they are working on another 2D Zelda remake with how well the last one did.
Do you think they're gonna do a remake or just a new game? Like, at some point, I think they gotta do.
I think
they'll
do
Zelda.
both. I think they'll do both. I think they might. I'm not sure which one will come first, but I would be surprised if either Minish Cap or the Oracle games aren't being remade at the moment. And both of those would do very well. Along with, of course, as you said, another option is a brand new 2D Zelda game, which
that wouldn't be this year. That would be like 2022 or 2023.
No, that's what I'm saying. These are options for later, because to your point, they can't release everything. But I think that's why
it's one of a few options.
Twilight Princess HD makes the most sense, because they're the easiest, so you can just get them out real quick.
I could also see them porting over the Nintendo 64 ones.
Yeah.
So
like that would also be another easy one. It's been a little while, but I feel I'm gonna go with Skyward Sword, February, September for Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh man.
I feel like that's, but again, like it's Nintendo. They have so many options. It's like at this point in time, I think Breath of the Wild 2 September, something else February. What it is, I'm gonna guess Skyward Sword, but it can be anything at this point. It can be a couple games just brought forward, remastered. It could be ports from the Wii U. Like it
yeah,
so many.
Actually, Birdman said, they could announce DLC for Age of Calamity in the Zelda Direct. Yeah, that's another option. We could get DLC for Age of Calamity.
For sure.
There are a few characters that there was like voiceover work for that they didn't actually implement into the actual gameplay. It could just be characters that they just were thinking about, but they didn't finalize it. Or it also could be that it's like the beginnings of potentially DLC. They didn't announce it at the Game Awards, though. I would say oftentimes DLC is announced either shortly before or shortly after a game's release. But it's also something they could just save for a Zelda Direct or an Nintendo Direct focusing on Zelda things. So that's possible. And in terms of other potential things that they could do for for the 35th anniversary without sort of like shooting everything out like a new 2D Zelda, another 2D remake, and the other 3D Zelda remasters. They could do like Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask on the eShop. What they could theoretically, they could have a whole other revamp of the Nintendo Online service, and perhaps bring in some sort of N64 games. We did see that Nintendo created emulators for the different Mario games on 3D All-Stars, which seems a little extra. It could be because that is the beginning of them preparing to have individual eShop releases for different classic Nintendo games, and maybe they're going to start with some N64 games early in the year alongside with Switch revision announcements, like a whole sort of revamp for the Switch ecosystem, and that may include a number of games that could start off with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. They could announce that around the same time. Maybe there's actually just an Nintendo Direct that has a Zelda focus. That comes out on the eShop, but then you also announce Age of Calamity DLC. You get like a Skyward Sword HD or some sort of other Zelda Legacy game. And then towards the end of the year, maybe September, maybe October or November, you get Breath of the Wild 2. And I think that's like a pretty good amount of like software without completely using up all the other Zelda stuff they can use in the coming years.
I agree. Now, as far as, because we are doing predictions, so I'm gonna
do it.
I'm gonna predict Skyward Sword HD and Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are gonna come out. I think Skyward Sword HD will come out first. I don't think it'll be a triple pack, Andres.
Okay.
No, we might get a double pack for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess.
Nice.
But not a triple pack. I think they want to sell a brand new Zelda game, even if it is a remaster. It's still a brand new remaster. They're gonna want to sell it for $50-$60 on its own. But I could see the double pack for the Wii U ports. And then I do agree, September through November seems to be that window for Breath of the Wild 2. And then I really like your predictions for N64, but I'm not predicting that. I'm not going to predict those.
I want them. I don't know. You say anything about NSO getting better, and I just
right.
I don't know if I can agree that that's going to happen. I almost feel like it's wishful thinking at this point in time. Like all I want is for NSO to get better, and it just slowly chugs along.
Yeah. Is that it for Zelda predictions pretty much, though? I'm predicting Skyward Sword HD in March and Breath of the Wild 2 October or November. Brandon, you're predicting a Skyward Sword HD early in the year and then the Zelda collection? Did I get that right, or did I mishear you?
Yes.
Okay, and then Breath of the Wild 2 at the end with a Switch revision.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be like, start off with Skyward Sword HD, sandwich, and then have Wind Waker and Twilight Princess sandwich in between that and Breath of the Wild 2.
Okay. And Dumo, what was yours? You're predicting 2 Zelda games right now. You're thinking Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, February and September, and I don't think we're gonna get directs. I think we're gonna get very few directs next year, and I think they're gonna stick with the trailer launches.
Very interesting. That actually is a great transition point to our next topic. I see also along with Stormquick's question here, which I'll sort of read out. Do you think there might be a Nintendo Direct in January? So right now we're going to talk about the whole Direct situation. Our predictions were in relation to how Nintendo's going to handle the Direct. So I'll just say mine first. I do actually think that the Nintendo Direct will be returning. Could be wrong. I don't think Nintendo's done with the general Nintendo Direct. I think if they were actually done with the general Nintendo Direct, they would have slowly phased out the Direct branding, but they've been consistent. Regardless of what variation we see, they still have the Direct branding every time, even when it's probably not a good idea, like with the mini partner showcases, they still do it. So I think that's coming. But to your point, Dumo, it may not be so much that they're done with it, but they may not be ready to go back to it.
My thinking of why they didn't do general Nintendo Directs is because they didn't have big first-party games to show off. For the most part. I mean, like, look at what big party first games that we got. Like, there are, 3, 4 in the entirety of 2020? And not all of them were even made by Nintendo. So they didn't really have any big first-party games to show off. So they showed off in third-party directs, and when they did have something, then they had, the Mario Direct. And it was really the only big thing they had. And so I think you can really argue that there wasn't enough first-party content to make an entire direct, which is why I think they focused more on these trailer drops, because they wanted to spread things out. They didn't want to dump everything at once because they didn't have much to announce in the first place. So if they dump everything at once, they're like, oh, we just did all our announcements. Now Xbox and PlayStation are dominating the hype completely since we don't have any big first-party things to announce anymore. So I think when the return of bigger first-party Nintendo games like Breath of the Wild, like, they're not gonna blow up Breath of the Wild in a trailer. Let's be honest. They're going to do that in a direct. 100%. They're not going to blow up Breath of the Wild 2 in trailers. It's going to get a direct.
What do you think, Dumo? Do you disagree that with Brandon's point that they would have to show Zelda in a direct, or do you think they can get away with doing just a trailer drop?
They can do a trailer drop. That thing would explode. That thing would go viral very quickly. I agree that they didn't have a lot for 2020 to announce in a big general direct. I think more of the lacking of the general direct had more to do with the uncertainty, which is going to persist through at least the beginning of 2021. I think we're still dealing with COVID. Vaccine or not, immunizing an entire country is not an easy feat.
But we do have vaccines now, so you know.
Even if, but they're limited.
Sure.
There's still going to be a bunch of precautions. There's still going to be a lot of uncertainty, and I don't think I think the big issue with the direct and Nintendo right now is that once you say it in a direct, you're committing to it, and I don't think they want to commit during uncertainty. They've talked about it a fair bit in the past, like Switch past, not like before that, but they want to announce games and then have them come out when they said. They don't want to keep like delaying it. The only big one they really have at this point in time that I can think of is Metroid Prime 4, and that got that, again, I'm talking like during Switch. They didn't actually delay it for Switch.
I mean Breath of the Wild 2. They announced that with no particular release date in mind. It's already been so long since then.
And we haven't seen anything. But anyways, like it's really just those two, and the only one that's actually been delayed is Metroid Prime 4, and they straight up came out and said we're restarting it. I think throughout the year they're not going to be doing directs for their big releases, just based on the fact that they don't want to commit to them until it's a couple months out. That's just my thinking on it.
Okay.
I will argue the fact that they're already doing that. They're already announcing hard release times for their games at this point. We already know Monster Hunter Rise is coming out in March. We've known that for months. We already know that 3D World is coming out in February. We've known that for months. They're already giving us hard predictions with things that are coming out half a year later. You got to think in January, that's going to put a lot of games in that half-year window, and they would definitely be comfortable with doing directs. I feel like they're already comfortable with saying things in advance, so I don't agree with your point there.
I love it. We got fireworks.
They're willing to say some games in advance, but are they willing to say, 10, 15 today that are going to be coming out in the next 6 months and give them hard dates? I don't know. I feel like they're going to be a little bit timid towards committing so many things at once.
I think they're already getting very used to remote development. We've already heard Sakurai's talked about it a ton, where he even said that his development was not very delayed, and they're already starting to get back into the studio. Japan itself is doing way better than, say, here in America or most of the West. A lot of things are getting back to normal there, and even when it's not getting back to normal, they're finding very good ways of coping with how they're doing it. I mean, we've already seen things like the Smash DLC coming out earlier than anybody expected, which is surprising. I think a lot of people thought that it was going to get delays, and the fact that we got Sephiroth as early as we did was another sign that Nintendo Studios are already recovering and getting things done. We're getting release dates now. We're actually getting news information. I feel like that window where the pandemic is really, really harmful and Nintendo's uncertain is already starting to be over. Nintendo's very comfortable sharing things now. And they seem to be very comfortable with their position in the pandemic.
Well, I think you both can probably agree to disagree. But
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this is my point of view.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I'm
we can
offended
disagree
for
on.
the both of you. Oh my god, we can't
We can have
stand
different
this.
points of views. We don't need to
So
involve in the name calling and whatnot.
you
This
both
time,
are.
this time.
You both are.
Not this time. Not on stream. No, off stream.
We'll wait
You're about
till
to get
afterwards
it.
and really get this going.
You're both pompous Nintendo fanboys. How about that?
Sure.
Joking aside, I want to say that I think you both are right in terms of why there weren't directs in 2020. Like it's not just one reason; it's multiple reasons. The truth is
Right.
often somewhere in the middle, right? I think part of the reason is because there wasn't a lot of big new Nintendo games to talk about, but at the same time, it was also because of the pandemic, and that led to a lot of just not really being sure of what's going to happen next, so they wanted to be careful about that. But I'll also say that we did get a fairly large Nintendo Direct Mini in March where they still had the COVID precautions and letting us know that, hey, look, you know, this may not happen. So I think the model of having a Direct with even with that sort of COVID disclaimer, they can still do that. They can still put that out there. But to Brandon's point, I do think we are getting closer to the industry getting, or at least Nintendo getting closer to being able to develop things more consistently, or bring things out more consistently and understanding when that's going to happen. As you noted, Brandon, 3D World Deluxe and Monster Hunter Rise were announced a few months in advance, which is unlike a lot of the other announcements we got all throughout 2020. So I'm siding a little bit more with Brandon on this one, but of course you can never really be sure, right? You can never really be sure. And even in years where there hasn't been a pandemic, Nintendo has been very good about making us wait as long as possible before we get that Direct that we've been waiting for, you know? So it really could go either way. To kind of go back to Stormquick's question, I am hoping for a Nintendo Direct in January. I think it makes sense to have a Nintendo Direct in January because there's no games actually coming out in January. I think it's the right time to start talking about things to keep us interested, have us something to sort of look forward to, start pre-ordering things, have some shadow drops to sort of tie things over until February when there are game releases. But that doesn't mean Nintendo will do it then. That doesn't mean it will even be a Direct, to Dumo's point. So it's hard to say for sure, but if I had to make a prediction, my prediction is the Nintendo Direct will return. And I do think there will be an actual presentation for Zelda, whether it's a Zelda Direct or a Nintendo Direct that includes Zelda and has a huge Zelda focus. It's going to be one or the other, and it will either be in January or February. That is my prediction. And going back to the whole debate about whether Nintendo could, would Nintendo just drop a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, or would they have to say that for an actual presentation? I want to point out that for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, not Breath of the Wild, not a mainline Zelda game, but a spin-off made by Koei Tecmo. Yes, they had just had a trailer drop, but it also wasn't just a trailer drop. It came out at the same time as more of a 6.5-minute little presentation where Agent Nua started off the show and said, hey guys, look, I know you want to see Breath of the Wild. I'm paraphrasing again, okay? Not saying literally what he said, not verbatim, paraphrasing. He said something along the lines of, hey guys, I know you're waiting for Breath of the Wild 2. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer. And then he said, but I have something else to show you. Hyrule's Age of Calamity, some of the Koei Tecmo guys came out afterwards. It was sort of like a little Zelda presentation. It was more than just a trailer drop, is what I'm getting at. And that was just for Age of Calamity. So if they felt the need to do that for Age of Calamity, I would argue that I think Nintendo's more on the money here, and that if Nintendo's gonna really like show off Breath of the Wild 2, it's because they are showing it in a presentation. But at the same time, they could have showed off Breath of the Wild 2 at the Game Awards, right? They didn't. Why didn't they do that? Maybe it's just not ready. Maybe they just want to focus on what's in the near future. Or maybe it's because there is some sort of Zelda event around the corner and they want to save all their Zelda announcements for the same time. I think it's going to be a Nintendo Direct, actually. I'm siding more with that than a Zelda Direct, just because I think there's other things Nintendo wants to talk about. So that's what I'm thinking. I think there's going to be a Nintendo Direct, and it'll have a Zelda focus. Like, Nintendo's going to announce, hey, we're having a general Nintendo Direct. It's about 35-40 minutes long, and it's going to have a Zelda 35th anniversary focus. That's what I think is going to happen. There will be other things included, but that's my mindset right now. Obviously, I could be wrong. Take it with a grain of salt. This is just my prediction, my speculation, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Right. I could also definitely see a mini and then a dedicated Zelda Direct if they.
Also, yep.
Just because they
could
did
do
that. The Mario 35th as a dedicated Direct, so I feel like Zelda at this point is pretty much on par with how they like to hype it up. In fact, they hype Zelda up more than Mario. I mean, we saw Breath of the Wild announced, or the sequel announced way before most other games in the platform. They're definitely hyping it up longer than their typical Nintendo game, even Mario. So,
yeah. I'll say that when you talk about Zelda in that way, it does kind of make me think that maybe your prediction has more water when it comes to the Switch Pro. Like, a big new Zelda game has more potential to push a Switch Pro-like device. But at the same time, if the Switch Pro device isn't like a big deal, just like a minor enhancement, then they don't necessarily need to push it with Zelda. But they could also do a thing where maybe they showcase the Switch Pro and have a trailer running with the improved visuals, but that still comes out later of the year, and we still get, like, it comes out like a little bit earlier with some other stuff, right? But
definitely possible.
Something I want to talk about, because I like your point, Brandon, that it may, if it's not like a general Nintendo Direct like I'm thinking, I think what you're saying also makes sense. Have a mini Direct and then a Zelda Direct, because I think there's a few other things that the Nintendo needs to talk about. So, Doom, I don't think I've talked about with this yet. I every time I have another guest on here over the last month, I keep asking their opinion on this. It's related to Metroid. So, I definitely think there's going to be some Metroid stuff. We're kind of moving on here. We're good with our Zelda predictions, right? I think we've gotten our thoughts out on that, and the Nintendo Direct as well.
I think we covered it pretty good.
Okay, cool. So look, we're moving on to Metroid now. But before I talk about Prime 4 and Prime Trilogy and 2D Metroid, I first want to talk about a Samus skin in Fortnite. I know some of you hate Fortnite, but that doesn't matter because I'm excited about it and I'm going to talk about it because I think it actually happened. Okay. It's a prediction. I think Samus in Fortnite is happening. So the reason why I think it's happening is because Season 5 of Fortnite is all about bringing in hunters, bounty hunters from different dimensions. It's this huge crossover for Fortnite where they're working with so many different brands and franchises. And it's not just like Marvel and Walking Dead and things like that, but it's also with the big gaming companies. A week before the Game Awards, we got Kratos from God of War. That's a Sony franchise. That's basically Sony's Mario. They threw him into Fortnite, and he's playable on the Nintendo Switch and Xbox, which no one would ever think would be possible, but it happened. The week after, Game Awards, Master Chief, Halo, the Mario for Xbox, Microsoft, added to Fortnite, playable on all platforms, including PlayStation and Switch. So now we have Nintendo, the odd one out. And Samus Aran is the bounty hunter from Nintendo. Yes, Star Fox works for hire. Yes, Captain Falcon is technically a bounty hunter. But when we think about hunters, bounty hunters, games that actually have hunters in the name, it's Metroid, Samus Aran. The one that makes most sense is Samus Aran, especially if Nintendo is planning some sort of Metroid release this year, or perhaps a couple. If you look at what's going on with both God of War and Halo, guess what? Halo Infinite and the new God of War are both coming out in 2021. Fortnite is marketing these games a little bit. There was a deal going on here. And right now, Nintendo's the odd one out. I think Metroid's around the corner as well. So that's why I think a Samus Aran skin is coming to Fortnite, perhaps sometime in January, which is why I also think there's either going to be a Direct Mini, like you said, Brandon, or a general Nintendo Direct where they'll announce a number of things, including this Fortnite crossover. I know there's a lot. What do you think, Dumo?
Why not a Monster Hunter?
They can do both. They can do both.
Okay, for starters, my opinion on Fortnite in general, it's not for me, but I have a lot of respect for what the game has done. To be that popular, to sell for that long, and be popular for as long as they have, to be on every platform, including phones, to break down the wall of crossplay. You don't have to like it, but I feel like you got to respect it. Like that, there's a lot there. As far as Samus, I honestly feel like Samus is more of a reasonable idea than thinking Mario is going to go over.
Oh yeah.
Like
Definitely Mario would never happen.
Nintendo is incredibly controlling and very, very careful with their properties. So I feel like getting Mario or Link or someone like that would be a lot harder to transition into Fortnite just due to the protection that Nintendo wants over their IP. Whereas Samus and Metroid, as much again as they like to protect all their IPs, I feel like that's one that they would be willing to take a risk with. And I feel like it actually does work quite well. It's also one that they have used in other franchises. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate had multiple Samus armors. You can get Zero Suit, you can get regular. Like it's stuff that Nintendo has used before in collaborations. I don't see why they wouldn't have a collaboration here, especially again, it's Fortnite.
It's huge marketing.
If you want to get, like, we talk about Smash being big marketing, Fortnite is a little bit bigger as far as player base and people. Like it's more eyes, and more eyes aren't going to hurt. And if it gets people interested, that's the whole point of the collaboration. Is it's good for both sides. So I definitely could see it. I don't see why not.
Yeah, and I want to point out that if this is actually happening, it kind of strengthens my belief that some sort of direct of some sort is in January, because season 5 of Fortnite's not gonna last forever.
I think it ends in March.
Okay, so maybe they could still do it in February. Thanks for pointing that out. But my point is that kind of strengthens the idea of a direct happening sooner, because that's when I would sort of expect it to happen. And the reason why I would expect it to happen then is because I think they would want to do it once the game's already known. So it's possible that they announce a Metroid game first and they don't have this Fortnite thing in a direct, but I think they want to announce a Metroid game first that's coming out in 2021 before they do the Fortnite thing. Because the idea is that this Fortnite thing will market and push the Metroid franchise. The same way Microsoft is doing it for Master Chief and Halo Infinite, the same way Sony's doing it for Kratos and God of War and how that's coming out this year. I think Nintendo's want to do something for Metroid. And to be clear, Nintendo still would be giving us the lesser thing here, right? Like God of War is far bigger to Sony than Metroid is to Nintendo, as is Master Chief and Halo to Xbox. Like a more fair trade-off would be Link or Mario, right? But they're not going to do that. They would do Samus, which I think makes more sense because of the whole motif of season 5. But my point is that it makes sense. So I kind of think it's happening. But of course, it's not confirmed. We haven't seen any data mines or anything like that, so we don't know. But that's what I'm sort of thinking, which sort of brings me into the whole discussion of what is Nintendo planning for Metroid in 2021. I actually am predicting that there will be some sort of earlier presentation, January or February, where they will have some sort of Metroid announcement. Maybe it's just the Fortnite thing, but I think they have to do that alongside a Metroid announcement. Maybe Prime Trilogy, but I'm actually going to side with a 2D Metroid for early in the year. I'm not super confident about it, but that's what I'm sort of thinking will be happening. My more confident prediction about Metroid and 35th anniversary for 2021 is actually Prime Trilogy for the 35th anniversary, which I think would be coming out in August, which is the actual anniversary time for Metroid. And what's interesting about that is that August is after E3 time, and I think there will be some sort of E3 presentation. Maybe not an actual convention, but like some sort of director presentation around then. And I think we could get like a Breath of the Wild 2 situation where we have a teaser, but it'll be for Prime 4. I know, that's a lot, but that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Going off of that, I could definitely see the Fortnite announcement alongside of a new 2D game. If they are announcing Trilogy, I feel like Trilogy mid-year would mean Prime 4 in March as the March release to kick off the year, which
for the
to
next
me would
fiscal
then
year. Oh, that's interesting. I love that.
which would because again, like my whole like I've goes back
Consistent.
a while for anyone who's seen me on here before. It's my whole thing is that Trilogy comes out at the beginning of the year. Prime 4 is holiday. Now they could drop Trilogy mid-year and have like the big March release be Prime 4, and then going into holiday with whatever the follow-up to Odyssey is for Mario. I could see that.
Could you say that last part? I missed you.
I could see if so. Mid-year for Trilogy, March release for Metroid Prime 4, and having it in March would mean that you would need something else big for holiday. I could see them going into holiday with new Mario, whatever the follow-up is to Odyssey.
Yeah, you know what? Your prediction is really close to mine. So you kind of agree with me. 2D Metroid / Fortnite Samus skin for early 2021. But for the Metroid 35th anniversary, which is this August, they could come out with Prime Trilogy, a legacy game which Nintendo seems to be wanting to do right now. And that would lead into Prime 4 hype and such. And I wouldn't expect it to come out as early as March, but we have seen Nintendo do big things for March. Monster Hunter Rise is coming out in 2021. Animal Crossing was last March. So to have Prime 4 for the next March, I can see that. That's not too much of a stretch. Now, I don't know. It may be a little soon. I don't know how far into development they are. So that's why I'm sort of thinking maybe a holiday release or a close to holiday release in 2022 for Prime 4. But hey, I'm not complaining if it comes out that soon.
The thing is, from a business standpoint, March is a great time to have a huge release because it gives you a nice boost to end your fiscal year so you can go to investors with. And then it also, like the sales that trail off are in your next fiscal year, which is, again, another little boost to start your year off. So it wouldn't surprise me. Again, it all comes down to COVID, and it all comes down to what they are actually doing. Like, if this announcement for Fortnite is real. If the announcement for Fortnite is real, I could see them either announcing with a 2D, or the announcement happens and that kicks off their campaign into Trilogy 3. Into Trilogy, and then, but again, I'm quite adamant that it's going to be close. The Trilogy to Prime 4 is going to be, you're looking like 6 to 8 months out. I feel like is basically somewhere in that range, because they want to capitalize Trilogy going into Prime 4, and that's something I'm gonna stick with until I'm proven wrong, which very very well could be, but I'm gonna be consistent with this.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the timeline because I'm worried there may be some confusion. So the timeline is early 2021. Maybe we see an announcement for Samus and Fortnite and a 2D Metroid, and that sort of kicks off Metroid talk and hype and marketing. Then past the mid-year point, or around the mid-year point, we see Prime Trilogy. Then in 2022, you're suggesting maybe March. I don't think it'll be March. I think it's too soon, but I'm not going to complain about that, right? I think that I do agree with you that Prime Trilogy sort of leads into the marketing for Prime 4. My perspective is that that window will be a little bit larger. But either way, I think we're fairly close in our predictions here. But you know what? We want to know someone who hasn't said anything. It's Brandon. Brandon, are you there?
I am here.
Do you have any predictions for this, for Metroid?
As far as Metroid goes, I'm kind of iffy on whether or not it will be in Fortnite, but I do think that something Metroid will come out next year.
Okay.
Whether that be Trilogy HD or 2D Metroid, I just feel time. So yeah, I think that they want to start kicking off, especially with the 35th anniversary. I think they want to kick off some little bit of Metroid hype, a little bit of a Metroid revival.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all agree something Metroid's coming in 2021. Then, Dumo, you and I are kind of like closer in our prediction there.
I don't think Brandon's really like far away from us. He's just being more conservative as to like, oh, they're not going to be a big blowout, and a little bit more unsure from the announcement is kind of what I'm getting. So I think we're somewhat on the same page. Is we're all in like 3 different stages as to, you know, how conservative or excited we're gonna get over it.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see with Metroid. We do gotta continue to move on because we're already hit the 2-hour mark. I know you got work in the morning, so I don't want to go on for too much longer. You let me know if you're getting tired. You got to step out. That's fine.
Sorry, I roasted you in the comments there.
What? Who got roasted? Me? Oh, all good. I'll read it eventually.
Birdman added me. If Samus is coming to Fortnite, then the Twitter page of Fortnite would tease something in Twitter, and maybe Nintendo will follow through just like Sony did with Kratos. Maybe. We'll have to wait a little bit longer. I mean, I don't think it's happening now because Nintendo's done for right now. We'll have to wait maybe a week or 2 into January, I think, before we start hearing more announcements from Nintendo. But yeah, I think that's a possibility. Guy you don't know says, I hope that Nintendo actually acknowledges Metroid's 35th anniversary. So I think that 2021 is going to definitely be a big anniversary year. Zelda, I feel like, is the one that most people are pretty confident with is happening. There's another one I'm even more confident than, but I'm going to transition to that momentarily for the next topic. But for the Metroid situation, I'm not saying there's going to be a Metroid 35th anniversary direct where there's Samus Aran shoes, there's a Metroid movie, there's like Metroid live circuit where you can play in your living room as Samus. Like, no, there's not going to be that. But there's going to be, I think, some sort of reference to the history of Metroid. Same way they did for Fire Emblem. I think it's going to be a little bit bigger for Metroid because there are Metroid games that are coming out this year, I think. So it kind of makes sense to maybe put something there. Prime Trilogy being the one that makes a lot of sense because it's 3 different games in one, sort of telling the history of Metroid Prime at least. That's important. And if you can kind of get 2D Metroid and Prime Trilogy in there, you're sort of covering both bases, which is really cool, I think, because you're kind of telling the whole story of Metroid a little bit in that way by having both games in there. So I think that's going to kind of happen, where they're going to acknowledge it. And a game will be coming out close to that around that time. That's what I think. But nothing more. There's not going to be a huge Metroid celebration festival. It'd be amazing, but that's not what's going to happen.
Unfortunately, Metroid is not as big as the other properties, and it's going to be overshadowed by Zelda no matter what you do. As far as are they going to acknowledge it? Yes. The thing you got to fear is not that they're not going to acknowledge it. What you got to worry about is that their acknowledgement is going to be, oh my god, 35th anniversary of Metroid, and that's their Twitter post, and that's
it's
all
just
you
like
get.
A Samus gif or something. There you go. Enjoy.
I feel like it's time that we get a Metroid game anyways. I definitely think that the people who made Samus Returns for the 3DS
Mercury Steam.
Mercury Steam probably hopped right into another one because I mean they said it themselves that I think Fusion was the one they wanted to remake, but they decided to remake the other one because of a managerial decision. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, hey, now that we did this and we proved ourselves, can we do Fusion like we wanted to?
Yeah, I think that's in the cards.
It seems about time that would be releasing. So, and then of course you got Trilogy HD, which apparently has been in the works for forever. So
I don't even think it's been in the works. It's just done. It's just done.
Probably.
They're just waiting. But so we're all in agreement something Metroid's coming. We're all predicting something Metroid. Hopefully this year we're right because we predicted a Metroid every year and it hasn't happened. But I think this is the year.
I didn't predict a Metroid every year. You predicted a Metroid every year.
Okay, fine.
I think I've been pretty conservative on Metroid because I think I've been. I think even when people are calling Metroid, I think I've been saying 2021, 2022, just because I feel like that's going to take a while, especially after the restart.
Well, we're in agreement right now, so.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, but it took me a while to get here. because I was predicting Prime 4 for 2018. Call me crazy. Well, let me make my argument, and I was wrong. I took the L then. I'll take it again now. But the reasoning was because they had announced Prime 4 in 2017. And if you look at all of the announcements Nintendo was making around that time, everything had a very short announcement to release window, less than a year. So I was simply arguing that compared to everything else, it would still have the longest announcement to release window, but it would still happen. Of course, I was wrong, but it was delayed. But they had to restart development.
In your defense, if they did not restart development, I would have expected 2018.
It would have been close.
Without the development restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without the restart, 2018, 2019 at the latest, would it that just makes sense. After the restart, it's like, ooh,
yeah, it changed everything. And since the restart, I've been thinking that probably 2022. Like, there's a hope of 2021, but at this point, no, because we continually are seeing hires. And sure, the hires don't mean that they're early in development, but they're still building up that team. And I understand that they're going to be hiring all throughout development, even towards the end. But we haven't even seen Prime Trilogy yet. We haven't even seen 2D Metroid yet. I think those things have to happen first. Then Prime 4 comes. So, not predicting Prime 4 until 2022, but I do think we might see a teaser for it around E3 time this year. That's what I think.
I'd love it.
I mean, it would make sense, right? Because I feel like they want to announce Prime Trilogy around the same time as when they show off Prime 4 gameplay.
Now, do they show off more of Prime 4 than a logo? And if they do a logo, is it different than the first one?
I don't think they'd show another logo just because, like, why would you do that?
There will be a logo, but there's also the gameplay, so that's all I really
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think they would show just a logo.
Yeah,
and
the cool thing is
some sort of teaser.
Yeah, the cool thing is that if a Switch revision is really coming out this year, then Nintendo is then allowed to start showing trailers using that version of the game, the best looking version of the game.
Right.
So, it would make more sense for marketing and such. That's just something that I think is worth noting. But let's now move on from Metroid, because we're kind of talking about anniversaries here, right? You got the Zelda anniversary, but maybe Metroid anniversary. Donkey Kong has his 40-year anniversary. Actually, let me talk about this first. I know this may not be a long topic, but I just want to kind of address it here. The Mario Odyssey team has been working on a game since 2017. Who says it has to be another Mario game? 3D World Deluxe is coming out this year, so I do kind of think that it would be weird to release a Mario Odyssey 2 in the same year. But at the same time, if the Mario Odyssey team has been working on a game since 2017, you gotta think they're close to completion by 2021. So they could come out with a game in 2021, is what I'm saying. Mario Odyssey 2 seems like something they might want to save for next year, to your point, Dumo. But what if they didn't work on a Mario Odyssey game? What if they worked on something else, like a Donkey Kong game? And they sort of timed it up so it could come out for the 40-year anniversary for what I think is the most important game in Nintendo history, Donkey Kong. It'd be really cool, wouldn't it? It's not a prediction, but it's just speculation I want to put out there.
Okay, I'll throw out a prediction just for fun.
Okay.
Donkey Kong 40th anniversary, they release a Donkey Kong 99 on NSO.
Oh.
Well, that'd be neat, actually. That'd be pretty fun.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Just
I could
racing
see
up
that.
the girders. Yeah.
That would be the third one of those they've done. It's
do like an infinite loop system.
Yeah, like it's simple enough for them to do because it's something they've already done, and the game itself is not like I can't see it being overly intense to develop.
Sure.
And then they just reuse the whole idea of the system from 35, and then like maybe not 99, but like they just have a decent size 40.
Yeah.
40. There we go.
So let me ask you guys a question. Do you think it makes sense to, like, what's more likely? Is it more likely that we get a 3D Donkey Kong game in 2021, or do we get Mario Odyssey 2 in 2022, and maybe we get a 2D Donkey Kong game, maybe another Donkey Kong Country game this year, or 2021 for the anniversary?
Considering there's only been one 3D Donkey Kong game, and it wasn't particularly revered to be amazing, I'd imagine that having a 2D Donkey Kong is way more likely. considering those are actually critically acclaimed.
I got to agree on that one.
Damn, he's right.
Although I would love a 3D Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Yeah, I would love it.
There's a lot of things they could do with that.
And then as far as like a Donkey Kong Country goes, who would make it?
Well, Retro Studios could probably make it. They probably
At the same time as they're trying to
what have they been doing?
salvage Metroid Prime 4's release window.
Here's the thing: they've been working. What have they been doing since 2014? They haven't been working on Prime 4 since 2014. They restarted development at the beginning of 2019, or at least that's when they announced it. So like maybe they started towards the end of 2018. What were they doing that 4-year period before that? What were they doing?
The same thing every other company does when there's literally nothing going on. They repainted their building.
And they just twiddled their thumbs.
They probably worked on engine tech a lot of that.
Maybe.
Because they gotta get ready for the HD era.
But they also can make more than one game at a time.
But again, they were making something. We don't know what they were making.
Yeah.
Apparently some sort of racing game was the rumor. Like
I'm pretty sure that people saw the Star Fox DLC for what is it?
Starlink.
Yeah, for Starlink, the racing DLC. I'm pretty sure they saw that and was like, Star Fox racing game. My God.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Man, when I saw that trailer, I was like, damn it, the rumor's wrong. Yeah.
But you know, like I don't know what they've been like. At the same time, they could have been doing anything. They could have been supporting another studio for all we know. Now, granted, you'd think that'd show up in credits and we catch that.
That's the thing.
But at the same time, you know, how many people have actually caught everything in credits that goes by?
I feel like
how many people caught
noticed.
Monolith? How many people caught that Monolith had a role in developing Splatoon 2? Like that's not something even now you say it, like people don't really
helps out a
recognize
lot.
that.
They have like 5 or 6 different studios or something. Like they're just always like helping out different Nintendo developers. That's one of the challenges of Retro Studios though, is that most of the big Nintendo teams are all nearby each other. They can help each other out.
Yeah.
Retro Studios, all alone.
They also speak a different language for the most part.
That's another challenge. Yeah.
I feel like, again, I feel like, I don't know. I'm curious to know if they code in Japanese or if they're coding in English. I feel like you'd code in your...
Probably English.
Like
I can't imagine everybody in the studio knows Japanese fluently enough to do.
No, yeah, I think they probably developed.
I mean, like in Japanese studios, but like in Japanese studios, would you? I'm curious. Would they develop in English or Japanese?
Japanese, I'm sure.
Like I feel like they would, but then again, that also puts Retro in another awkward situation where how much help can they actually get from other Nintendo studios?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just interesting to think about.
You can tell all their hires are from other Western developers.
Yeah, but like again, they're a Western developer that happens to be owned by Nintendo.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But what have they been working on? Like they had to have been doing something. But so it's like, can they actually be properly assisting other studios? Could they again?
They've done it before.
As was said,
they helped out with Mario Kart 7.
Can they?
Which was like 10 years ago almost.
Were they possibly completely redoing an engine? Which again is kind of odd to redo an engine, but not with the game specifically in mind. Usually, like a lot of times when those developers make an engine, it's during the process of a game. Right. So I don't know.
It's probably just a failed game that never came to be.
We shall. I don't know. It could be waiting.
Something man. Again, they could be sitting on it. I mean, like Metroid Prime 3 is apparently done. They sat on Mario Odyssey from launch, which apparently was ready to go, and it was Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. If Breath of the Wild is good, we're launching with Breath of the Wild, and if not, it's Odyssey and Breath of the Wild's at the holiday.
They were sitting on Pikmin 3 Deluxe.
A lot of optimizations. They didn't just stop working on it.
True, but they have been sitting on like another one, Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Like they've been saving that for a while. So. It's interesting.
Now the other thing is if they were sitting on if
Why
they were
didn't
sitting
release
on a
enough?
game, yeah, why not release in 2020 when there's nothing else happening?
That is.
Well, there's tons of money being spent and nothing else is
Well,
happening.
I'll give you this. What if they felt that it made more sense to save their new Donkey Kong Country game for the 40th anniversary? That they had picked it well ahead of time. That it was going to be like a big sort of summer release or something. That was their plan, and they didn't want to move it from that slot.
I could see it as being possible and something Nintendo would totally do because they're crazy.
They got away. Whatever that happened in 2020, they got away with it. Okay, they got away with it. They had record
Everyone
sales.
did.
Everyone still cares about Nintendo. Next generation systems came out. They had no internally developed games to come out at the end of the year. They just had Koei Tecmo make a Hyrule Warriors game for them, a good one, but still just that. Then they're fine. They're just fine. So
Better than fine. They had crazy sales this year.
right. Like 2021 is probably gonna have way more games that are really amazing, and they may sell worse than last year.
And then on top of luck, let's talk about bots taking all of the next gen consoles. And you want to go buy something in a store? What can you get? The Switch, which eventually ran out of stock. Like, what a weird year.
Can't get your kid a PS5. Well, there's a Switch he also might like. Yeah, that makes sense.
This thing's pretty popular.
For sure. But let's move on because there's still some stuff to talk about.
Okay.
So I'll just get to a chat here. Beverly Carter, is there any prediction about a first-party rep like Xenoblade Character Generation Pokemon or Hyrule's Age of Calamity? So I'll tell you that I still think a Xenoblade 2 character is very likely. I think there's gonna be probably one Nintendo character. If there's more, love it. But if there's gonna be one more Nintendo character, it's either gonna be Impa from Age of Calamity, a Xenoblade character. I really doubt Pokemon. I really doubt it because I feel like if there wasn't a Pokemon character, they would have already announced it. The whole wave of the DLC has now passed. The opportunity to market it, because that's what it would be for marketing, has gone. So, for example, Byleth happened, but the day they talked about Byleth, they also had the Fire Emblem DLC come out, the trailer for it. They used that as marketing. The window has sailed to market Sword and Shield. So I think there is no Pokemon rep coming. That's what I think. Could be wrong. But I'm thinking that if we are getting a Nintendo rep, it's either Impa from Age of Calamity or a Xenoblade 2 character.
I feel Xenoblade 2 character if we're getting a Nintendo property. I
Agree
highly
with me
doubt
again.
we're seeing.
How about that?
I highly doubt we're seeing anything Pokemon right now.
Yeah.
Really
at the
hope
same
not.
at the same time, I could totally see that happen. The internet burned down, and
Yeah. Well, I do want to put
I could literally see them putting out a trailer that said "Save Smash." Okay, here's Pokemon.
All right, please let me have the segue. On the note of a Pokemon Smash character, though, there are going to be a lot of Pokemon stuff happening in 2021. 25th anniversary of Pokemon's coming up. Pokemon Day is coming this February. As Birdman is noting, there is a special collaboration between the International Space Station and Pokemon, where there's a live stream. Not saying they're going to start teasing things there, but Pokemon is putting stuff out, right? Regardless of how they're going to tease or market things, they are absolutely, positively going to have their 25th anniversary celebration. This is not a prediction. This is will the sun rise tomorrow? Yes. Yes, it will. Pokemon will celebrate this anniversary. They celebrate anniversaries even when it doesn't make sense to. And on top of that, we've already seen during the Macy's parade for Thanksgiving, them use the 25th anniversary Pikachu logo. So it's happening. It's just happening. So my prediction is there will be a Pokemon Direct in either January or presentation. They may change the naming of it, but some sort of presentation for Pokemon in either January or February, and they'll talk about their plans, which will include new Pokemon Snap. We'll get a date for that. I think if Detective Pikachu is not far off, that could be announced as well. And I think we're going to get an announcement for a remake of Pokemon Pearl and Diamond to come out towards the end of the year. That's my prediction. Also, before I let you guys go, I'll say in reference to the final opportunity to announce a Smash character is February. If it's a Pokemon character, that's a final chance. But if it's a 25th anniversary thing, it might not even be a Sword and Shield thing. But I really, really doubt it. Floor is
I
yours,
can see
guys.
it. Obviously, there's stuff happening for Pokemon. Pokemon is and again, like as much as it is Nintendo, Pokemon is its own thing. They are controlled by the Pokemon Company. So they're definitely going to be doing something. It's just a matter of how much. They also are better at celebrating things and sticking with their communities. Even if their communities are mad at them, they will stick with them. They're going to do stuff. I'm curious if Snap is going to come out. I hope it comes out. I could see something on the eShop, not the eShop. I could see an NSO release as well of something older,
like Red and Blue, for example.
I could see it. I mean, you can never release Red and Blue enough, right?
Everybody's just screaming, "We want more Kanto, please!"
I could see them releasing it. It comes to NSO in black and white and in color. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah. It'd be like little filters or something. It'd be nice.
I could see a new Snap coming next year, as well as
I see it as like in like somewhere between like April and like August.
Yeah. Now, what I want to see is new Pokemon Snap and the announcement of remakes. I don't want to actually see the remakes. I want them to stagger it a little more, because I think in my opinion, that was probably the biggest issue with the franchise in general right now for the main series games, is I don't think they're being given enough time, and I would really like to see them get a little bit more spaced out. The other thing we got to talk about, if we're going to talk Gen 4 remake, are we looking at like not like Let's Go style of throwing your Pokeball, but are we going to see the map style where it looks more like a DS game versus the full 3D of what we're looking at from like Sword and Shield?
Yeah, that's where the debate is. I at one point was unsure of the Let's Go. Let's first cover that, and we'll go back to the whole Galar versus 2D grid style. Like, at first I thought maybe they would do like Let's Go Johto, but I just feel like, given that Johto kind of goes back to Kanto already, I don't think they need to go back to Kanto again. Be kind of weird to do. Like maybe afterwards, like maybe next generation they do Let's Go Johto.
What? You mean everybody's not screaming to go back to Kanto again?
They do it. I don't think they would have any problem doing that. It's just whether or not.
Well, here's the other reason why, though. They need to complete the national decks. They're not done yet. There's still a couple hundred left. I think it makes more sense to have a game that's more of the traditional style to do that. If you complete the generation with a Let's Go, that's not going to be the traditional style of gameplay. They won't have all the national dex Pokemon in there. Now, you can still go back to Sword and Shield, and they can release those Pokemon in Let's Go and have them transfer over to Pokemon Home. But this feels like a roundabout way of doing it. I really feel like it makes more sense for there to be a traditional mainline Pokemon game, not Let's Go style, that incorporates the final Pokemon of the national dex. That way they have all the Pokemon of the national dex available for this generation by the time it's over. Most Pokemon generations last for 3 years, so they kind of have to get things done with this last game this year before they move on to next generation. Not to mention, the Gen 4 Mythicals are missing. They're not available in national dex yet. So that's kind of something that leads more credence to the idea that we'll get a Gen 4 game. Gen 4 being Pearl and Diamond remakes.
I feel like it's definitely what people want, and I do actually like that idea of being able to bring the remainder of the national decks to this generation, to the Switch. So you can at least, no matter who your favorite is, by the time this generation is done, you can see it on in the new graphical style. You can see it in HD. I like that idea, and I hope that's where they're going with it.
Now, there's a perhaps a darker perspective here. They'll still complete the national dex, but they'll do it in Let's Go Johto, and the way they remix Kanto is by having this invasive 200 Pokemon that are from Kanto just jump in there, and that completes the national dex, and there you go. Like, that's one way to mix up the gameplay for Kanto that we've revisited so many times already. But I really feel like Gen 4 remix is what's going to happen. That's what I feel I mean, it's a prediction, so it's not for sure, but it's about as I feel fairly confident that that's what we're getting.
Yeah,
I think
I don't know. Yeah, no, I see. Let's Go did well, but it wasn't like it sold well, but it wasn't received well.
Yeah,
and the sales for a second one might be worse than the first one.
Gen 4 remakes are going to sell more than Let's Go Johto. I think that's likely.
It was also an experiment, so even a successful experiment, we have to remember the team would have left that game into whatever their next project was. So if it was an experiment, I doubt they left Let's Go into another Let's Go.
Right.
Because it's an experiment. So I feel like Gen 4 is, or anyway, some sort of more traditional style remake is more likely than a Let's Go at this point. I'll say it that way. Whether or not it's Gen 4 or whatever, I could see them just messing something up.
Just from a sales perspective, like I felt like Gen 4 seems like more of a safe bet than a Let's Go Johto.
Yeah.
Like Pokemon Company is not. They are aware that there's a huge demand for Generation 4 remakes. They've been doing remakes. They're not going to stop doing remakes. So I think Gen 4 is likely.
There was definitely a huge outcry when Let's Go came out and people were like, well, where's my remake?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see.
I see Michael Lamb in the chat. How about Pokemon Stadium 3? Well, here's the thing about the Pokemon Stadium games. What was really cool about the Stadium games back in the day, back in the 90s on the Nintendo 64, is that it enabled you to take your really simple sprite-based Pokemon and play it on your television, big screen, 3D graphics, have a whole bunch of cool special effects. That's now what you can do that with the current mainline Pokemon games. So the need to have a Stadium-like game is not really there anymore. Like if they were to go ahead and make a Stadium game, it would have to be like a smaller release, because I just don't see how you can make a $60 game where there wouldn't be some overlap there. Like there wouldn't be much reason to do it. Do I think it's possible? Yes. I just feel like it's not super likely. I feel like when you look at what they already have for Pokemon, the mainline games, that need to make a game where you can take your Pokemon, play it on your television with big awesome graphics, well, that's what Sword and Shield already is pretty much. So I just don't see another Stadium game happening anytime soon. We just got a new Snap though, so
I don't think they're doing a Stadium because they're not going to change. Like, it's not like you're going to get a bunch of new animations for all the Pokemon because they went into Stadium. Snap is using the animations that are in Sword and Shield. So like there is like creatures makes the Pokemon, they animate the Pokemon, and then people get to use them. Like the studios get to use them. So it's not like you're going to be seeing a ton of different animations like you did in the older games. It's going to be like the battle part of Sword and Shield, but with rental Pokemon, which Sword and Shield does have rental teams, and it's going to be very narrow. Like I just don't think there's not enough there without it cutting into what Sword and Shield is.
I'll tell you this though, I think there is room to have a Mario Party kind of thing, but for Pokemon. Like the mini games in Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 were really cool, really fun. I do think there is definitely a market to have like a dedicated Pokemon party game. That I think could happen. I'm not predicting that, but I think someday down the road they could be like, let's make a party game about Pokemon. Like that is totally possible. I might like that. I think that I'd like that more than Mario Party actually. Just because there's a lot of ideas you can sort of play with in terms of like they could use the different mini games to sort of convey different stories and pieces of lore behind different kinds of Pokemon and what they do. Like they could have a game based off how Zangoose are always hunting around, right? They got a game based off how Snorlax is always sleeping. Like they can play off the lore for all the different Pokemon, so there's a lot more potential there in terms of that. So I think I'd actually like that more than a Mario Party game. But going beyond that, I don't really see a Stadium of any sort happening anytime soon.
Yeah, the only downside to that, and the other thing as far as like Stadium goes, is if we're seeing things along that line, unfortunately, they're going to mobile.
What do you mean?
They're gonna end up on cell phones.
You mean like
So
Stadium?
they're not gonna do a stadium, but if they're doing something along those lines, like the mini games,
Oh,
I feel like that's gonna end up on mobile because I think they're making more money there than they are off the main line.
interesting
It
point.
might come to both. We've seen it before
Well,
where they come to both Switch and mobile, but yeah.
It's going to be a mobile game that the Switch runs.
Right.
The thing is, if it's a Mario Party style, that's more for local multiplayer. So I'm not sure I agree. I understand your point about like mobile stuff. They do have a lot of mobile Pokemon games coming, so they can maybe do that. But in my opinion, there's still plenty of room to make a local party game. But we're talking about
there is.
Yeah.
I think they want to take them. I think they really want to sink their teeth into the mobile market, and it's not something that I want. It's something that I believe.
How surprised would you be if they were to announce a new Pokemon Snap mobile version?
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Oh, I would.
I wouldn't be overly pleased with it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I think part of it though has to do with
Possible.
yeah, it is possible. But you just look at like the visuals for new Pokemon Snap. It's definitely cut above your traditional mobile Pokemon game.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off right there and say that iPhones have been more powerful than the Switch since like 7.
I understand what you're saying, Brandon, but if you look at what Nintendo does with their mobile games, they're never like big graphically intensive games. They never are. Never. Not even the Pokemon ones. So I know what you mean, but like not all smartphones would run those Pokemon games really well. I just don't see them doing that. They haven't. None of their mobile games have done that. So I just don't expect them to do that for new Pokemon Snap either. I know what you mean. There are some games that are pretty high fidelity games that are on mobile. I understand that, but not from Pokemon Company or Nintendo. If you can think of one that there is, just let me know. I just can't think of any.
I will say I don't think they support phones even for their normal games. They don't support that other than like the 6. I'm pretty sure not even the 6 is being supported anymore. So if they wanted to, it wouldn't hurt their current phones that they're supporting to release something that's more graphically intensive. But yeah, they haven't so far.
Yeah. But going beyond Pokemon, though, I mean, do you guys have any other predictions for Pokemon? Like, it feels like we're all in agreement that Gen 4 remakes are the most likely thing. And like,
Pokemon's fairly easy. They're on a clock. It's just I don't want the Gen 4 to release next year because I want the teams to have more time. Realistically though, I feel like I could see Snap being early to mid-year and holiday for Gen 4.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
As much again, I would rather see Snap holiday, Gen 4 next year. They're on a clock and they like to keep that timing.
Yeah, I think the two big Nintendo games for 2021 are going to be Breath of the Wild 2 and Gen 4 remakes. It's a nice balance, honestly. You get the more of the, I don't want to say Pokemon's like not hardcore, but it's, more mainstream, right? A little bit easier to get into. And then you have the hardcore, darker Breath of the Wild 2. Like, that's a nice balance, and that'll be a great way to close the year. A really great way, especially considering, assuming that we get like a Prime Trilogy, we get like a 2D Metroid, we get a new Pokemon Snap. We know we're getting Monster Hunter Rise, and there's Monster Hunter Stories, and then Shin Megami Tensei 5 and 3 Remaster. There's probably gonna be a few more third-party announcements. Also, No More Heroes 3. What else is there to talk about? I mean, so I want to. There's definitely still options here. Like, that's not everything. There's a few other things. For example, we could potentially get like a Fire Emblem remake in 2021. That could be in the cards. Monolith Soft could be working on something. Brandon, you got on me the other day that I keep like sort of like being very vague about what Monolith Soft may be working on. We have seen like those pieces of concept art that have like that medieval sort of stuff going on. Some of it had even like some sort of Zelda in there. Not sure if it's related, but they are working on something potentially medieval-esque. They've been working on it for a while. Microsoft has several studios. They've been helping out different internal and internal teams, but they're going to have something on their own. And I know they did Definitive Edition, but that's a remaster. The last big new game they were working on was Xenoblade 2 that came out at the end of 2017.
The remaster probably wasn't even made by the same team who does the mainline games.
Right, I agree with that. Same way how it's handled with Pokemon. Like, the main team's not working on the remakes. They're working on the next generation. Yeah, so that's something that could happen in 2021, or at least get an announcement for it. We probably could see a Mario sports game or two as well. Another game that we haven't talked about is Bayonetta 3. In my predictions video, I predicted it for 2021. Now, do I have a lot of reason to think it's coming out in 2021? My main reasoning is simply, well, it's been enough time.
For at least 4 years.
It's been enough time. He keeps it. Kamiya keeps saying that everything's fine. So
everything's going along just fine. How long until it's not fine anymore?
I think that they announced it like really close to when they started developing it, but people kind of took it as they've already been working on this for a while, so it should be coming soon. When really that was like barely after they had started on it.
Yeah,
it's seeming to be that way. Well, we've been caught up with that a few times now. It's because Nintendo's been so good about announcing things when it's very close to ready.
Yeah,
so.
I guess, obviously hindsight is 2020, but I guess the difference is that was the beginning of a generation. They wanted to have us, just present some really cool things to get fans excited. The same way Sony and Microsoft do the same thing. They show off these CGI trailers that really tell you nothing about the game, but they're in development, and they're going to be in development for a couple of years, but they're just something to kind of sort of excite fans. I think that was what Bayonetta 3 was meant to do, along with Prime 4. It's just something that they just want us to be excited about. So it's the beginning of a generation for new hardware. Another thing I think that's worth noting, though, is that Bayonetta 3, while Nintendo is publishing it, and for all intents and purposes, Bayonetta is now a Nintendo character, technically, it's made by Platinum Games, not a Nintendo developer. So because it's like outside of Nintendo, perhaps we shouldn't hold it to the same standard in terms of announcement to release window, So for those two different reasons, maybe we should have not assumed that they had started development a long time ago before it was its announcement. But either way, I think 2021 might as well happen this year.
It's going to happen eventually.
Well, here's the thing. Like, let's assume they literally started the day. They literally started the day they announced it, which is not true. There has to at least be a few weeks to put together that trailer. But let's say they started in December of 2017. 2021, holiday 2021 will be 4 years. That's enough time. That's enough time to make a big AAA game. So, I expect
that's actually a long development cycle for most of Platinum's games.
Right. But Bayonetta 3, we've heard from interviews that they want it to be really big, really ambitious. It's going to be the biggest, best, most bombastic Bayonetta game yet. So, it's going to be a big deal, and that could be another really strong game. I don't expect it for the early part of 2021, but maybe summer. I would say summer would be like the earliest time we see it. I could see it hitting like that late summer period, early fall period, like the August or September area. But I see it happening finally. Hello, kitten.
It'd be nice. I feel like we have to at least see it, right? After 4 years of development, they gotta at least show the game.
I don't know. It feels weird when it's been so long and you haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, are we gonna get a date the next time it's shown, or are we gonna get something to lead up towards showing of the date? Which, like a lot of that stuff, again, like that could be done in Nintendo Direct, where they show a trailer of something that's in development and don't give a date. Possibly even just giving a window of like 8-9 months away that isn't even in that same year is like, it still does a lot, and it still builds a lot of hype.
Yeah.
And then it shows us, and then we've actually seen something that's okay, this does exist. Again, like that's kind of what we're looking for Metroid right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going beyond Bayonetta 3, like, do you guys think Bayonetta 3 is happening this year? Like, is that a prediction? It's my prediction, but do you guys just think it's a possibility? You're not ready to commit to that.
I'll predict that we will at least see the game.
Okay.
I could see us seeing it. I don't know. I don't want to say that we're going to get it in when we haven't seen anything since 2017 at all.
Yeah.
I'll say we'll see it. We won't get it.
Okay. I'm predicting it, but you guys are saying we'll just see it. That's fine. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we're really missing here. I'm sure there's some little thing. But, I mean, is there anything that you guys haven't particularly you would want to predict for 2021 that we haven't really talked about yet? Or if you just want to expand upon something that we talked about earlier?
I'd like to expand upon the Monolith Soft thing.
Go for it.
I 100% think we'll see something from Monolith Soft next year. They finished Xenoblade so quick, like 2. It was done in like 2 years, and that was a very big game. Now, obviously, that game probably needed more polish than it had, but it also gave them a big stepping stone into working their engine for the Switch, and we saw Torna make so much more great strides into being a more polished experience.
Sure.
So they seem to have gotten Switch development down with the second installment, and 2 to 3 years for them is normal for a game. It's been that long since they said that they were starting this new medieval project. I think 100% will see it, and most likely they will release either that or something else next year.
Again, it's one of those things where I feel like we'll see it. I don't know if we'll get it, but I want to at least see it. I'm like, that concept art's been sitting there for so long, and they've had a release since then. I want to see a new game, even if it's from Xenoblade Chronicles. I want to see a new game with them, with a studio of more than 26 people.
Right.
Like, I want to see their studio put out a game, not their studio piece together a game like they did for
that's the interesting
Chronicles
thing. Like,
2.
Monolith Soft has grown so much over the last few years. Like, that's a good point. Like, just to see them go all out with all their guns loaded, fully prepared, properly, proper amount of development time, no rushing here. Like, what can they put out?
Give me a team of 50 to 100, please.
I mean, like, imagine Xenoblade 2 did have a large team and they took a little bit more time. Xenoblade 2 is a great game, but it definitely could have been better in the tutorial side of things. There is definitely some weird graphical things here and there. Good looking game, but there's some different things they could push. And I'll also say, personally at least, after coming off of Xenoblade X and the original Xenoblade, I felt like the Titans of Xenoblade 2, while fairly expansive, you saw so much of them, but there was really not that much to them you could explore, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I've been saying this all along.
So it just kind of felt like, they made a good game, but it could have been so much better. So, it would be amazing to see what they could do if they had the full development team ready to go and the right amount of time.
The core game in and of itself, the campaign itself, the battle mechanics, they're all amazing. It's just everything surrounding that's less polished.
Well, it's not even so much polish. It's the cohesiveness. So for anyone who's listening that doesn't know what happened with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Monolith at the time was helping with a lot of games for the Switch release. We're talking Breath of the Wild, Splatoon. What else were they on? They were on a lot of year one games on Switch. So they were strapped. I believe it was 24 or 26 people they had to make Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So they outsourced a lot. In 2 years, they outsourced a lot of their work, and then they were like piecing it together. So like different menus were made by different things. That's why you have like
the artwork isn't even consistent.
Yeah, like you have menus where like certain buttons do different things. Like you'll have the same function in 2 different menus, but they'll be handled by different buttons. It's this these were done by different teams. Like they outsourced so much and they pieced it together. And yeah, I would just like to see a full, like, this is Monolith Soft. We didn't have to outsource to make our game. This is what we did. Because to me, if they can outsource everything and piece together what they did for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which I loved, I want to see what their whole studio can do. Like I don't even care if it's Xenoblade Chronicles. I don't care if it's a new IP. I don't care if they're reviving an old IP or using. I don't care. I want to see what they can do. Personally, that's where I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, Monolith Soft has been
agree.
growing. Like you know, even though they're kind of spreading themselves out here, I think the act of working with all these other internal Nintendo teams these last few years is kind of making them like even more of an internal Nintendo team. Like. We sometimes still hear, oh, Xenoblade's not a Nintendo game, it's third party. No, that's just very, very, very wrong. But once upon a time, Monolith Soft made other games that weren't technically owned by Nintendo. Monolith Soft used to be a part of Squaresoft, and they broke off, and they made some of their own games, and then eventually they were bought by Nintendo entirely, and now they're an actual internal Nintendo studio. But over the last few years, they've been continually helping out different Nintendo games. And I'm just saying, like, they've definitely been picking up on what the other Nintendo teams have been doing. So I'm just saying that Monolith Soft has only been continually getting better, hiring more talent, becoming more acquainted with the other internal Nintendo teams. So to see where they've grown a lot. So to your guys' point, I'm just really excited about what they could do. Because I agree, they have a lot of potential. Absolutely.
Yeah, very talented studio. And again, so for anyone listening, if you are not familiar with Monolith Soft and you're interested in studios at all, go look up their history. It's interesting. A studio literally built with the idea of not laying people off, not firing people in between projects, not, the layoff and recall of people. That's basically what they were built around. And their negotiations with, like, the whole thing is really interesting. I highly recommend just like even going on Wikipedia and just checking out some of the information on their studio. It's absolutely just so interesting.
And something that you'll hear when you look that all up is that they worked on Breath of the Wild. You see that amazing overworld? Monolith Soft had a lot to do with that. They are kings at making beautiful giant spaces with beautiful terrain. So Breath of the Wild looks in part amazing because of Monolith Soft. So just kind of give you an idea of what they're really capable of. So what were you gonna say?
I have to agree. Like they do. Like they build some amazing worlds.
Oh yeah.
Now, there's a couple things I'm seeing in the chat here that I think will hopefully help to sort of complete our predictions. So first, I'm seeing a few people bring up Pokemon Unite. Cortex, don't forget about Unite. I think that will be a shadow drop right after the presentation for sure. So Pokemon Unite is that big mobile game that was announced earlier this year. To some controversy, but I agree that's coming out. I mean, it's coming out next year. And to see it shadow drop, that makes sense. That could be something that we see in February, for sure. Going beyond that, I see Thomas the Talker. They added me. What do you guys think about Mario Kart 9 in 2021? So this is... It's tricky, because the ARMS Mario Kart team, the team that made those amazing games, did finish ARMS in 2017. They just had some DLC for ARMS come out, but besides that, nothing else. They're another one of the big internal Nintendo teams that we don't know what they're working on right now. It could be Mario Kart 9. Absolutely. But I'm just going to say I don't think it's Mario Kart 9. The reason why is because, one, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is, I think, still barely the best-selling game on Nintendo Switch, but it's still selling really well. It's an evergreen title.
Number one.
Yeah, Animal Crossing is close, though, and it hasn't even been out for a year yet. But on top of that, Nintendo just released Mario Kart Live Circuit, another Mario Kart, a Mario Kart spin-off, but a Mario Kart game nonetheless, and it just came out for Nintendo Switch. And on top of that, Mario Kart Tour has been thriving as well. So you have 3 different Mario Kart games that are all doing pretty well. 2 of them are on Switch. So the premise of them releasing another Mario Kart game on top of that, when you have 3 of these games selling actively well right now, I'm a little bit skeptical of that. Especially because you got to think about timing here. We talked about earlier in the podcast. It seems like the next generation for the Nintendo Switch is about 2 to 2.5 years away. Ideally, to make sure that system starts off strong, they're going to want to have something really good to come out with it. If Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out now, Mario Odyssey 2 is coming out the year after, Prime 4 is coming out now, if you consider the timeline of things, none of those the next entry for Zelda, Metroid, and Mario probably won't be ready for the next generation. So what are they going to have? Smash is probably going to take a big break. You know what could be ready by that point? Probably the next Mario Kart game. So my impression is that Mario Kart 9, we won't see it until the next generation of Switch 2.5 years from now. And whatever the Orange Mario Kart team is working on, something else. Something amazing, but something else. That's what I'm thinking.
I could see them assisting projects right now if they were expecting to go on to Mario Kart 9 and it, like, 8 Deluxe is just, like, it, to have it still selling what it is at this point in time is just amazing. I don't see the need for 9. And so I could see them working, like them being pushed into other projects, helping other studios at this point, while they wait for the time to start 9. 9's going to launch or be right in the launch window of the next generation console. I think it's silly not to. You buy a Nintendo console, you want that party game. It's going to be your Mario Kart. The other one that we're not going to see another one of until next generation is going to be Splatoon. I don't think we're going to see 3 until next gen.
They already practically confirmed such.
And again, so that's 2 studios we have no idea what they're going to be doing right now. Well, the Splatoon studio is going to be pumping out DLC for Animal Crossing, which is selling crazy. But after that ends in a year or so, like, what are they moving on to? We just don't know at this point.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when you think about it that way, I think it may not be that bad of a prediction to say that both Splatoon 3 and Mario Kart 9 are going to be Super Switch launch games or launch window. Like that's how the timeline is suggesting right now, I think. But
I feel like they have to be, because you're not gonna, you don't want to split your player bases either. The last thing like they want with Splatoon is to split their player base. As much as it might bring in or bring back a lot of people, you're splitting a player base on a console. You still have a player base that's on the Wii U that's still playing there.
My brother still plays in the Wii U.
Yeah, like I think it's a bad idea to split your player base right now. And if Splatoon trailed off, if Mario Kart was trailing off, yeah, they would probably, like, 9 would probably be coming out very soon. Splatoon 3 would be in the works if the player bases were really trailing off, but they're not. Sales aren't even trailing off. They're still doing amazingly well. Like,
For me, what is a nail in the coffin is that they released Mario Kart Live Circuit, which is definitely fairly different from a traditional Mario Kart, but it's another type of Mario Kart game on the Nintendo Switch. Like, if they didn't bring that out, then I'd be like, okay, you know what? Maybe there's still room to do a Mario Kart 9 on Switch if they make it vastly different from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, you know? But because they also released Mario Kart Live Circuit, that's kind of like the very different Mario Kart game already, you know what I mean? Now, that was made by a small team. It's not made by an internal Nintendo team. I understand that, but the fact of the matter remains, it's another Mario Kart game that they put on Switch. So after a certain point, I think they kind of have to take a break from Mario Kart and save it for when they really need it, which is the next generation, which isn't that far off from now.
See, the thing is, I could see them, that's why I'm saying, like, I could see them assisting with another project, is because at this point in time, we're looking at about 4 years out. And I'm sure they don't need 4 years for the game, but 3-4 years is a pretty decent development cycle for a AAA title. somewhere around now or next year would be a great time to start it for the next generation.
So you do think they have something else ready?
I don't know if they have something else ready or if they started working on it and Nintendo pulled back because of the sales of 8 and moved them to just assist other projects for the time being to buy time. Maybe like that's just something I could see from like a just because they don't want to have them working on another game and then not get 9 out for launch.
Yeah, but I'll also say I think there's a lot of value in them making another big online multiplayer game for Switch, especially if there is going to be like some NSO update this year. There is going to be like a Switch revision, like to bring out another big like online multiplayer centric Nintendo game to kind of push the revamp for their online service potentially this year. I think that makes sense. And if you look at what the ARMS Mario Kart team has done, well, ARMS and Mario Kart, 2 of like the top 4 or 5 big online games on Nintendo. So I feel like their pedigree suggests that they're working on another big multiplayer game. Not sure what that is. It could still be Mario Kart 9. I don't want to discredit that possibility. That's an option. But I feel like it might be something else. And I think this year does make sense for it, considering that they could have been working on it for the last 3 years or so.
Well, I hope you're right, because they kind of need something else.
Right, that's the other thing
that soon.
That's my thinking though, is that there's kind of a need for that right now. Like Smash Bros came out in 2018, Mario Kart Splatoon and ARMS all came out in 2017.
Right.
I think they need something else.
You gotta have some kind of relevant online game to keep selling your service. Keep those subscriptions getting renewed.
My only problem with them working on a new IP is, did Nintendo expect 8 to sell and keep selling the way it was?
I don't know.
Because if not, then they would have left ARMS development into 9's development. And if they did, so that's that. Like, again, like, that's just my thinking, is like, if they expected it to sell to the sales to trail off, they would have gone straight into 9's development. And then it's like, do you develop it for like 6-7 years, or do you pull them into assisting something else until it's time to start 9? Or did they expect 8 to sell like it is now and be like, nope, we're going with 8. 8's going to be the one for Switch, and then we're going to move this team from ARMS into a new IP.
I just think it's even if they're helping out with their developers, I think it's a long time between ARMS 2017. I know they worked on DLC, but it's just DLC, right? It's a big team.
Yeah.
2017 to hypothetically like 2023, right? Like that's a large window to not have another game. That's 6 years. There's no way they only use that team to help out other developers. I think there has to be another game in between there. So I do think there's another game. It could still be Mario Kart 9. That's an option. I don't want to like completely like discount that as a possibility, but as I've said repeatedly, because of all the other Mario Kart stuff, because of the timing of things of needing maybe a Mario Kart for the next generation and such, and because the other big Nintendo games probably aren't really positioned to be ready for that, I think they're probably working on something else first, and then they'll transition to Mario Kart 9 soon. What would that be? You suggested maybe a new IP. That'd be awesome. At that point, what would that? I don't know. I have no idea what a new IP is. There's so many options, right? But let's consider the possibility of them taking an already established Nintendo franchise and making that into a big online multiplayer kind of game. What are our options?
Star Fox.
Star Fox. Sure.
Star Fox multiplayer battles space.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah. That's great. I'm all for that.
Nothing on the ground whatsoever. Just multiplayer battles in space.
Basically, make it kind of like
dogfighting.
Yeah, online space dogfighting. Yep. That's a good idea. And they can still have a campaign with missions. They can still do that. For sure.
Just like the Nintendo 64 one.
Yeah.
You have no reason to be on there. Like, everyone always wants Star Fox to be just like 64's, where it's like that's what they want, and then they keep trying to build on the game. I think they have to scale it back. I think that's more what people are looking for.
I'm biased here, but I think I can restrain my bias enough to agree that Star Fox is more likely than what I'm going to suggest. Like, Star Fox makes a lot of sense. Like, it's toonish, Mario Kart is toonish, ARMS is toonish, but after seeing ARMS, though, you see they can still add a little bit of grit to their games, right? Like they can do that. They can do more than just racing. They can do action-packed games as well, and they've clearly demonstrated that they're pretty good at making really good online multiplayer games, right? So online style Star Fox, I think they have the talent to do that. But as another possibility, what about F-Zero?
You just really want that F-Zero.
Yeah, I do.
You know what? As far as a racing game goes, I think that makes more sense than 9. I think F-Zero would be
maybe it wouldn't be made by the ARMS Mario Kart team. There might be another team that's working on F-Zero instead. They might outsource for that potentially. You know.
No, I don't think they'd outsource. It
No?
might not be. It might not be that team, but I think if they're going to bring back F-Zero, it's being done by
Retro
an
Studios.
in-house Nintendo. Yep, I could see them doing it.
Maybe they already made it.
Maybe
Maybe they're just putting the
that's
finishing touches on it while they're hiring.
maybe
for
that
Metro Prime 4.
Star Fox racer was
Maybe.
actually, like I feel like if you're bringing that back, you want it done in-house. You don't want to take any chances on it.
Yeah.
Also, just one thing to note on big multiplayer games to sell NSO, they have a big multiplayer game next year for NSO to force people to buy it, and that's Monster Hunter.
True. That is a good point. It's a third-party one, but it's a big one that they are supporting and pushing. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's still sell NSO because people still want it, and there's a lot of Monster Hunter people that were waiting. The moment Rise was announced, they decided to buy a Switch.
To that point, I'll say that the other day, I don't know why, but my Nintendo Online wasn't set up to auto renew. So I went to play a battle on Pokemon Sword and Shield online, and I was like, "Why can't I connect?" It was like, "Oh, your Nintendo Online service is expired." What? What's going on here? So I just,
I believe I turned that off as well because there was some issues with things getting hacked and V-Bucks being spent for if you had your account. And as soon as that came up, I don't know where it was in the world, but in my Discord server, we have people from like all over the place. We got South America, we got Europe, Scandinavia, like we got like all over the place, and someone mentioned it, and I was like, well, that's getting removed from the shop right now. It's like they're not. It's like I will put it in each and every time I need to buy something. I don't care. So I could see if something like that came up, and that's why you turned it off.
I don't know why. But point is, I wanted to play a Nintendo game online, so I just paid for it. That's all you really need, right? If you have Nintendo Online games, like that makes sense. And Monster Hunter Rise would still count for sure. So maybe I still think we're gonna get like a multiplayer online kind of game soon from that team. It may not be next year, but I do think those kinds of games don't take 4 years to make. So I feel like 2021 probably is when they would come out with something. Like if I had to guess, if we're like which like big team is ready besides the Zelda team, like Retro Studios, maybe not, Monosoft, maybe not, but the Zelda team, I already said that, but the Mario team, like I could see them saving that for next year, to your point, especially with 3D World Deluxe coming out this year already. So like all those teams may not be ready, but save for the Zelda team, maybe the ARMS Mario Kart team, because the Splatoon Animal Crossing team just came out with Animal Crossing. They're working on DLC right now, so they're probably not ready to come out with a game in 2021. They maybe, but probably not.
And we haven't heard of them being able to run 2 separate teams. Now, granted, a big part of that team is now moved on to whatever their next project is, which could very well be a Splatoon spinoff, but they're still deep in with Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
And the people working on assets are still working on assets for DLC for Animal Crossing. So I would very highly doubt that they would be.
Well, here's the thing, though. A Splatoon spinoff wouldn't take as many resources.
It still takes resources, and you still got to ramp up.
I'm not saying it doesn't take resources, but a spinoff would take less resources, and they already have Splatoon 2. So, like, if they have that build, they could probably make something based off of that. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, while I agree with you, Splatoon 3 is a far ways off, it wouldn't shock me if they somehow pull out of nowhere a Splatoon spinoff in 2021.
Splatoon
don't
2 was made in what, 2 years?
with Monolith's help.
Right. Everything has Microsoft's help these days.
Yeah.
But it's just,
I wouldn't be surprised if
22 at the earliest.
March is when all the events will be out. Because essentially, from what I understand, you start with the events that were in March, and then you add the events as you go along. I doubt that they'll add new things for the events each and every year. It'll probably be, okay, we've added all the events. They'll repeat every year, like they do in, say, New Leaf. So that's when they'll start working on probably Splatoon 3 or Splatoon spin-off or whatever they want to do next.
Here's my thing for the Splatoon spin-off. While I agree it kind of makes sense to say Splatoon 3, they could probably get away with it, I think. Because there's a big campaign there and such, and just adding new DLC and levels like this. Maybe they could get away with adding a Splatoon 3 on the Switch now before next generation. But let's say they save it for the next generation, to your point, Dumo. That's a long time between Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3. I feel like they're going to want to do something to keep that brand fresh, because it is a big brand for Nintendo, which is why I think a Splatoon spin-off makes a lot of sense. To get something to kind of tide us over until the next Splatoon game. You know what I mean?
My problem with it is, what is it going to be? Because, you could do 3D, you could do platforming, but that's just Splatoon single player. That's the Octo expansion, which...
You've heard my idea before, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh, my idea is basically just flesh out Salmon Run.
I could see it.
It's basically like a horde mode game. It's like a cute zombie game, right?
To me, if you're going to do it that way, why not just do it in, what are your rewards for doing it? Whereas in Splatoon, you have a ton of rewards. Why wouldn't you just flesh out Salmon Run in Splatoon via DLCs?
Well, because after a certain point, they just moved on, I think. I do want to point this one other thing out, though. So do you remember the little, teaser they came out with at the beginning? And it had the salmons, and the salmon is, I should say, and there was even an SOS signal.
Yeah, save our salmons.
Sure.
Yep.
That, to me, it may have just been a Happy New Year sort of thing, but it also could have been teasing something they've been working on, because it was sort of implying something different about the story of the salmonids, So I kind of see it.
I'm gonna be honest. I imagine if they do that, they would just add it as another DLC pack for Splatoon 2.
Maybe.
I doubt they would release it as a separate thing.
I'll also bring this up. I think if I'm right, again, it's not like a prediction. It's more like just a consideration. It wouldn't shock me if this kind of game was actually planned for 2020, but it got pushed into 2021.
I'd be really surprised if they were working on 2 games at once.
I mean, maybe the spin-off isn't done by the main team, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be done by the Animal Crossing. They can, since it's a spin-off, they can afford to kind of, outsource that, especially if they already have the mold with the base Salmon Run. True.
My only thing is, do they need it?
I don't think they necessarily needed the game for 2019. I just feel like it'd be weird to go 6 years without releasing anything Splatoon related.
Yeah, but Splatoon itself has been getting. I mean, they're still doing Splatfests.
Sure.
We're talking 2 years of support. They had the DLC. They are bringing back Splatfests, which I'm surprised they weren't just recycling them.
When you say they're bringing back, because I haven't been following this too much, is it just a one-time thing, or is it we're gonna start doing this regularly?
They announced
up until
at a time, and then so the next one is in January, but they'll announce a couple, and then it's we don't know what's happening, and then as you get close, they'll announce a couple more, and so they wasn't supposed to be anything through 2020, and then they started doing a few of them, and it's not new ones. They've been recycling them.
Okay.
And I believe January is actually a new one, so we don't know if they're going to have a new stage for it, or if it's just going to be. Some people think they're going to cycle through a bunch of them. We don't know.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I guess we'll see to that point. Maybe they don't need to have a Splatoon spin-off to sort of maintain the brand.
And in doing that, they also, I believe they dropped the price by 20% for the game and the Octo expansion, and they got a ton of new people in, and they sold a lot. And it brought a ton of people back into the game, so the player base had a nice little boom.
Okay.
So like I could see if they were going to do a Salmon Run, so like really kind of focus on fleshing out Salmon Run, I could see them doing it in Splatoon 2 as a way not only to sell as a DLC, but also to bring players back into Splatoon 2 and keep them going.
Yeah, I see your point. But let's get ready to wrap this up. As Beverly Carter noted in the chat, thank you very much. This is the final podcast of the year. It's been fun. Definitely seen a lot of growth throughout the channel. I'm very excited about that. And 2020, we had some good. There are some gems. 2021, though, as we've been discussing, I feel like has a lot going for it. A lot. So I'm excited. My prediction is that my final prediction is that 2021 is just gonna be way better, and Breath of the Wild 2 is just gonna be, even if everything else is trash, which it won't be, Breath of the Wild 2 is gonna be so good. That's like my most excited game right now, most anticipated game. I'm excited.
I'm just hoping it's a year that pulls me from my PC back to my Switch. That'd be nice.
I don't know.
Tore me away so hard.
Oh, I can see that one. That's yeah.
Fair
but
enough.
For me, I mean, Rise is coming out in March, and I am incredibly excited. Breath of the Wild 2, hopefully this year. Again, very excited. We have the possibility of Monolith Soft. We have there's a lot of possibilities, and I hope some of them actually start coming to fruition, because this could be a really good year, but it could also be another year of silent delays. And so I'm trying to stay a little bit more reserved, but there's a lot of stuff that's there's a lot of studios that should be ready and coming ready soon. So hopefully.
So I just noticed Birdman said 7,000 subscribers on just restart, and I checked. Yeah, I broke 7,000 subscribers during this live stream. So
Congrats.
Dude,
yeah, that kind of means a lot for me, because I went into this month and I was like, okay, I really want to continue to grow on this because I love doing this and I want to make this my thing. But in order to do that, I need to do better. I need to make more content, higher quality content. I need to be more consistent. I need to, I guess, perform better, right? And I was thinking, man, I really should probably at least try and hit another good milestone, so I could be yeah, I made a big jump this year. But going into December, the beginning, I was in order to hit I told myself, let's try and hit 7,000 subscribers. But in order to do that, what I noted at the beginning of the month was that I would have had to have had the most growth I've ever had on the channel in its entire history in order to do that. And we did it. So
Just in time too.
Yeah, there's a couple days left, so maybe, I'll have a little bit of headroom in case YouTube's hey, we have 20 subscribers that don't watch, so let's just delete them. But yeah, I'm excited about it. So thanks, guys, for noticing. Thank you for the congratulations. It means a lot.
Yeah, it's good. Hard work's paying off. Content's looking good.
Thanks.
So congrats, man. It's big. Happy for you.
Thank you. Is there anything else you guys want to address in terms of speculation, predictions, or anything before we call it a night?
Monster Hunter is going to be huge.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
That I understand. That's
pretty
your
much
most
everything.
anticipated game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
For
Breath
me-
of the Wild 2 being a very, very close second. That's
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild 2 I'm super hyped for too. So
I mean, right now they're my top two as well. I don't know what else we're getting because we're not sure what's coming. But for 2021, those are my two as well. It's just for me, it's Zelda first, Monster Hunter second. I think I'd be really excited for a Gen 4 remake. I'm excited for a new Pokemon Snap. I'm super excited for Prime Trilogy, but again, games that already exist. 2D Metroid is also really high up there. I might be more excited for 2D Metroid than Prime Trilogy. Yeah, I might be. Depending on what that ARMS Mario Kart team was working on, that could be huge too. So, and then the Monolith Soft game, Brandon, did not upset you. I'm also looking forward to that. I just have no idea what it would be.
I think for
Does
me,
it matter?
other than Breath of the Wild, the thing I'm looking forward to most for Nintendo next year isn't even anything confirmed, and it's not even a game. I just want to see if they're going to do some sort of enhanced Switch, because I want to buy one really badly, because I'm a nerd and a techie, and I want the best thing possible, and I know that the Switch is such an ancient piece of hardware compared to what exists now.
The only thing I really care about for an enhanced Switch is them getting rid of a lot of the input lag from the gyro controls. That's the only thing I really care about.
Do you think that'll actually happen though?
Nope. I don't have a 4K. If I had a 4K monitor, then yes, I'd care about 4K in DLSS, but
I just want
I don't, so it doesn't matter.
1080p at least.
Well, I guess the thing with the Switch is
I don't even
the
care.
Switch is still not even being maximized on my 1080p television. Like,
Yeah.
if I were getting games at 1080p, that'd be great, you know?
We're not even always hitting 720p. We're not even always in HD. This is a problem for me personally.
I honestly, other than text, because my eyes are old and tired, as long as the text is in 720 or 1080, I am fine. The rest of it can look like a 3DS game. I can play like that. I've played like games like that for years and years. I would rather it look better, but I can handle that as long as I can read the text and it doesn't make my eyes hurt.
Switch
I'll
Pro,
handle it. I
but
just
only
won't
for
be
4.
happy about it.
Switch Pro 4K, but only for text.
You know what?
Just the text.
I'd be fine with that.
Hey,
Other than the fact that, again, I don't have a 4K screen, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I'll agree with you that.
Downsampling though.
Yeah, it'll still be as sharp as it possibly can be, right, for a 1080p monitor.
It's true. Just give me my gyro to be like more precise. I would buy it.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
Will Joy-Con drift be addressed in 2021? I don't know. No, probably not.
No.
Nintendo will fix it for you, but they're not gonna. I mean,
that's as addressed as it's gonna get.
I mean, they might have a quiet revision for new Joy-Cons, but it's not gonna be like a new version. Like, I don't think they're gonna market a new. I mean, no. If anything, maybe they bundle a Pro controller with a Switch Pro. You know, if it's $350, but that's pretty much it. I want to check with the chat here. I have a lot of like thank yous and congratulations. Before we call it a night. Oh, Mr. Go had a question here I missed. Which new characters do you think we'll get in the next Mario Kart game? Do you think we'll see other characters from other franchises? I absolutely do. I think after what they did with the DLC and the for Mario Kart Wii U, and then what they have on Deluxe, like I think they just have to continue in that direction of adding more Nintendo characters. Birdman, thank you for noticing earlier. Thank you, Javier. Thank you very much, Beverly Carter, for the congratulations. Thank you, Solidus. Reese's Pieces. I'll be more hyped for 2D Metroid if it's actually Metroid 5. That is assuming Prime Trilogy isn't a Crash Insane Trilogy style remake, which I highly doubt knowing Nintendo. I absolutely agree. I think Prime Trilogy is going to be more of a minimalist remaster. Probably good. Probably some nice quality of life changes for controls and such. Maybe have offered both dual analog and motion controls. But, you know, maybe they'll clean up textures. It'll be in HD widescreen. It'll look good, but it probably won't be like a remake. Yeah, I agree with that. Birdman, Monster Hunter Rise is going to be 1080p and 720p in handheld mode. Is that confirmed already? That's solid. That's really good.
Monster Hunter Rise, when pixel counts I have done, is around 720p.
Maybe he means for Switch Pro?
No. Rise, they have said that is what they are shooting for.
Oh.
That doesn't mean that's what they are recording and putting out in videos right now. And it also doesn't mean that's what it's going to launch at. They are targeting 1080p, 30 frames a second.
Almost certainly it will be a dynamic resolution.
1080p would be nice. I'd like to see that on the Switch game.
They are targeting 1080p 30 frames a second. That doesn't mean they get there.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if it hits anywhere in numbers between 720 and 1080p at any given point in the game. A lot of Switch games that target 1080p have a wide dynamic resolution range. So.
Okay. Well, I don't want this to get to 4 hours, so I think I'm gonna call it a night. There's one more question here from Nick Forrest. Do you think the Switch Pro will still be $300? We talked about it earlier. Maybe it could be 300, but I think we all agree that 400 is probably too high. Like that's the absolute maximum, but maybe somewhere between 300 and 350 seems to be our consensus here, right? So we'll see what happens. Maybe hopefully early 2021. But this is the last podcast for the year. We'll be live streaming again next week, probably. And it'll be a new year. Will there be videos coming out this week? Maybe. So stay tuned. But again, make sure to check out Dumo's channel. Make sure to check out Brandon's channel. They're linked in the description below. Check out their content. Give them likes. Like this podcast. That'd be appreciated. Share it. I wouldn't mind. But that's all for now, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a happy new year.
Bye.
See you guys.
Take care.